Hello everyone, Omni-Sensei here with I reincarnated into Jujutsu Kaisen during Gojo's sealing with a domain that steals everything, Part 2. If you enjoy these audiobook adaptations, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the original story linked in the description.
Maximum technique. An extension of a cursed technique possessed by either a sorcerer or a cursed spirit, pushed to its absolute limit. In a sorcerer's arsenal, this was the next best thing after his own domain. Unfortunately, in the modern era of Jujutsu, there are not many who can perform such a feat to push their technique to its absolute limit outside a domain. However, one such feat was currently taking place. Right in the night sky of Shibuya, a star had started to take birth. Heat and light emitted out of it in torrents as it lit up the night sky. In reality, this was no star. This was Jogo, and he was preparing his ultimate technique. A technique that was even more powerful than his own domain in raw output alone. While a domain provides a sure hit effect, the usual curse technique inside a domain is not that different for the most part. Upon having the option between a domain expansion with uncertain chances to kill Mahoraga in one shot before the Divine General adapts, or a maximum technique, which was Jogo's highest destructive power, there wasn't even a choice to be made. The answer was as clear as the burning ball of fire up in the night sky of Shinjuku. And while Jogo was preparing the fire, down below, darkness spread. From the soles of my feet to the end of my eyesight, the darkness spread, only stopping at the urban setting of the environment, with buildings and roads obstructing further expansion. Behind me rose a giant towering cross, even dwarfing the likes of Mahoraga. However, something was missing. The darkness was spilling out, not condensing, not overtaking the environment as it was supposed to. That was because there was no barrier to hold it. No, it wasn't an open barrier domain of the legends. This was a no-barrier incomplete domain born out of sheer desperation and my gamble. Remove the sure hit effect. Remove the barrier too. I don't need them. One by one, I traded away everything that made my domain a domain for a one-time execution to be able to face a monster such as Mahoraga. And the result was apparent. As I sacrificed the usual parameters and advantages of my domain, a sharp spike in my cursed energy was evident. Surged. Higher and higher until I felt my output soaring. It was a trade I made, obviously. Removing those effects let me improve my C output and stack it on the already 120% I was carrying after the last black flash. Energy filled my body. Felt like I could form a black hole with a mere punch of mine. A false sense of power, however, it was intoxicating. The darkness reached Mahoraga as well, sweeping under his legs like black fog. And the result? Nothing. Nothing happened. Without the sure hit effect of the domain, that darkness was just the material manifestation of my domain. It was harmless, and if something was harmless, there was no need to adapt to it. Both of us looked at each other. Silence stretched between us until it finally broke apart with a deafening booming noise as both of us launched ourselves at each other. Craters formed where we once stood, leaving behind a trail of dust, and then a shockwave was released at the point we met again. Both of our fists collided, resulting in a shockwave that tore out from the collision. I felt it in my bones. They almost felt like they were vibrating. Then the pain shot out as the clash ended, and I was thrown 3 steps back by the sheer physical blow alone. However, Mahoraga too was affected this time, forced to take a step back by the clash. Physical difference in weight aside, this was the closest I could get to his physical might currently. And what did it cost me? Everything, almost. Mahoraga's ever-grinning mouth gave out a chilling smile, which put a damn grin on my face as well. I felt like I was losing my sanity the longer I stayed here. It was maddeningly infuriating and fun at the same time. The wheel on top of Mahoraga turned once again, the adaptations never stopping. Bring it on! I shouted, eager to see what I had in this state. Maharaga was oblivious. Rushing at me with all of his speed, he slammed his massive hand right at my face, ready to dig me 6 feet down in one clean punch. I wasn't planning on taking that. Instead of stepping back, I pulled my own punch back and hit Maharaga right at the knee before his strike could arrive. It didn't work how I expected it to, honestly. The strike still plastered me to the ground, and I wasn't even defending against it this time, but much of its power was gone since I disturbed his balance. Groaning while lying flat on the ground with my head humming, I looked out to see Maharaga had pulled his leg back like a soccer player and then kicked out. I was the ball. Before that devil's foot fell on me, I wrapped as much cursed energy as I could muster around me, because the next moment, I felt like I had been hit by a cannonball. I was airborne with probably a few more broken bones and got slammed into a tall building, kicking up dust and destruction upon impact. I got engraved on the wall like a piece of modern art. The world around me spun until I saw a shadow falling right toward me. My eyes went wide with shock as I barely shifted my body before a meter-long sword pierced right next to me. Maharaga slammed into the same spot of the building like an angry Hulk smashing things in New York. This one just a tad bit smarter with a long-ass sword attached to him. Cold sweat broke out just thinking about what would have happened if I had shown even a heartbeat of delay there. Spotting a small gap, I dove down to get away from his hulking figure and land on safer ground, at least comparatively, but halfway through I felt my leg get grabbed. Oh no! Before I knew it, everything became hazy and I was slammed into the side of the building and then tossed up like I was some freaking frisbee. I flailed around helplessly midair when a giant shadow appeared behind me. Still midair, mind you. For God's sake, give me a Herculean punch cut my rant short as I was sent soaring back towards the earth in a diagonal direction. The reunion was nothing short of diabolical. Like a pachinko ball, I bounced around 3 times before finally, somehow, I don't know how, but somehow landed on my feet with one badass moment in the entire fight to call my own. Sliding back on both legs with blood splashing all over the place, my entire figure was bloodied, but I stood. Boom! A few meters away, Maharaga landed with his ever-so-devilish grin plastered on his face. The fight for a second came to a standstill. I just stood there, breathing heavy and labored to the point I felt like I wasn't getting enough air, if the building's suffocation was anything to go by. Lightheaded and blurry vision. Troubled breathing, hearing, standing, and continuing to exist altogether. Suddenly, my knees gave out and I fell back to the floor, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Surprisingly enough, that actually felt a bit better in my already terrible condition. Single punch. I gave up almost everything in my domain for a single punch, which also didn't do any damage. Just pushed him back 1 step. And now I was already in this state. The helplessness of weakness is only revealed in moments such as this. I tried to get up, but my body wouldn't move. It had reached its limit. There wasn't much left to give. Come on. Please, one last time. Get up. Tears seemed to pool in front of my vision. I was so close. If I fell here, I'd regret it for my entire afterlife. Come on. Rise. I didn't know what caused it, but giving up now didn't even feel like an option anymore. Nah, I'm way too far in for that. I'll win. Even if it kills me, I'd rather die a winner than live as a loser. So get up. Get the hell up. And surprisingly enough, to the point that I never could have believed I would actually do it, I got up. I saw the walking disaster back to Aura farming as he approached me with an ever-plastered grin on his face. And that's when I realized what made me get up. It was no longer survival instinct. This was EGO. My ego made me stand up. I ain't dying until I land a cool punch of my own on that bastard. Comical and ridiculous as it was, it brought a chuckle out of me and a similar kind of grin was plastered on my face. I realized I was losing my sanity. And what the hell, I was liking it. Ha ha ha. An utter war cry tore out of my throat as I rushed at the divine general with a broken body, mind, and ambition. Maharaga seemed to grin and rushed as well. He was faster, much faster. He arrived near me within seconds. However, just as he was near me, ready to end the fight once and for all instead of directly charging at him, I let go of my footing and my inertia dragged me forward, sliding me between the gap of his open legs to the other side. Maharaga stopped with a powerful stomp and turned around, but I was gone. The next moment I was on his back. I saw his snake-like tail connected to his head and at the last moment jumped to grab it. Pulling myself with all my might, and with one leg on his shoulder, I grabbed onto one of his wings. That earned me a very satisfying jerk from the jerk, who told me they were sensitive. Good. I always wanted to be Tarzan, so I took the leap of faith, grasping onto the wings and using them as a lever to change my direction in midair. Maharaga's entire body weight shifted by how I tugged on his wings. I turned back around on the wing, the laws of motion bringing me back to his head on the other side after one full motion, and with everything I had, I punched. The punch was strong, not a black flash. I doubt my body had it left in it to perform any more of those miracle punches, but it was strong enough to tear open the wing in my hand as I used it to enforce my weight midair and completely knock Maharaga back. He fell on his back with a thud. I barely landed on my feet before they gave way, and I fell back. And that was all I had. But I was happy, because I had just plucked a pair of wings from heaven itself. My grin only magnified seeing the pair of bloodied wings in my hands. It was my blood, though, but damn it, felt so damn satisfying. And then the adrenaline wore down when the beast once again got up. And he looked pissed. The wheel on top of his head turned once, and his plucked-off wing was regenerated. That was pretty cool. Wouldn't you agree? I grinned. The next moment, a comet-sized punch drilled me down into the ground. Another one followed a heartbeat later, and then another. Darkness crept into my vision. Everything was becoming numb at this point, but that wasn't the end, not at all. The monster grabbed me by the chest and pulled me up, right next to his face, glaring down at me. I looked back, or at least pretended to look back, since my vision was already blurry. Look, you kinda missed that spot I hit you earlier. There is still a black bruise. Guess your adaptation can be flawed as well. He grabbed me by the leg and slammed me down hard. It almost reminded me of a certain green monstrosity. But once wasn't enough for him. He did it again and again and again. Blood pooled beneath me, my C reinforcement doing the bare minimum to prevent anything too lethal, but it had its limits. I didn't even know how many times it was, but by the time he was done, I couldn't move. I just hung by the leg, lifelessly, in his hand. He scoffed and tossed me away hard toward a building. At least pain was no longer an issue when everything was numb, that is. Before I knew it, I slammed into something which broke my speed before, once again, I met a building. Ah, damn. I broke something. My eyes barely landed on a figure with blonde hair. Wait, isn't he the one? My mind connected who this blonde could be, and even with a broken body, my anger flared up. This was the guy who was responsible for all of this. Seems like I ended up exactly where the fight started. All in a cycle, I guess. He too didn't look in that great of a condition. Lying on my side, he had blood running down his face as well. His leg was twisted. No wonder he was still here. My eyes turned towards Maharaga again. The monster finally seemed to have his fill and was ready to end it. He walked step by step towards us. The boy beside me panicked but couldn't move at all. Just as Maharaga was right on top of us, sword of extermination ready to carve us out, my lifeless body moved. I used every last ounce of power left in me to grab the panicking boy. Oi, what are you? He couldn't complete it before I had dragged him right in front of me. Like hell I was dying alone. He was responsible for this, we'll die together. A small grin flashed on my broken, bloodied face. "Let's meet when we are down there, shall we?" "No. No. Leave me, you bastard. Release me," the boy shouted back, struggling, but it was already too late. The sword of extermination flashed and dug right through his chest, coming straight for my heart. At the last moment, I shifted him and myself ever so slightly so that the blade, instead of going to the heart, went through the upper shoulder. But I was done, pinned down, bleeding, and finished. There was nothing left anymore. The boy's eyes slowly lost their light. They say that at the last moment of one's life, we can see our life flash before our eyes. Couldn't see a thing. No matter what I did, my vision was just that of a loner who tried and tried until the end that stood in front of him. Or perhaps it wasn't the end. My dull eyes snapped open, with newfound energy, the last burning flames powering through. With all that I was worth, I squeezed every last bit of my remaining cursed energy and reinforced my hands, and grabbed onto the sword that pierced us. "Got you now." I took a very painful and deep breath in. It felt like my lungs refused to expand, but I forced it through nonetheless, and shouted with utter desperation, "Jagu!" The voice seemed to echo through the emptied city of Shibuya, ranging far and wide, until a flying curse-up in the night sky, hovering just before a dazzling sun, snapped open his one big closed eye. Fire shone in it. It turned with the very desire to burn. A yellow cape fluttered behind him with the dazzling light of the sun at his back. For one last time, let me show everyone why I'm the curse-born of the earth and fire. Take it. This is my peak. Jogo shouted, a menacing smile on his face.
Maximum technique, maximum météore.
With all of his strength, the curse hurled the giant meteor of molten iron and fire right at where I was. Maharaga seemed to sense it. He turned his head back slightly to observe and immediately planned to remove the sword and dodge the attack. However, first trade, no movement. Suddenly, a greater force wrapped around his body, completely halting every and all movement for both of us. A big grin plastered on my face. Even if the sure hit effect of my domain is not active, my domain is still deployed, you big shit, and you're currently touching me. Meaning I can trade. If he had eyes, they would have widened by now. Those wings fluttering around almost gave that impression. Second trade. Attacks received on the back do much more damage in exchange for attacks done on the front. Maharaga's back suddenly went hot. Because he was not facing the attack, he was facing the building where I was pinned. Only I could see the giant meteor coming. The wheel on Maharaga's head tried to spin, but I was making trades much faster for it to start adapting. I looked right at him, struggling to move, but my technique had him with almost no time to adapt. If I had used my sure hit effect from the start, then he would have long adapted to it. If I had my barrier up, then he would have broken that. However, without a barrier or sure hit effect, there was nothing to adapt, and nothing to stop Jogo's attack from reaching us. Say, Maharaga, how does it feel to look down on us mortals from your divine throne? Is it any different? The meteor burned through the air, and as it closed in, the heat increased, and the nearby buildings started to melt. Do you know how much I lost facing you? I lost my very sanity, you bastard. My eyes teared up. The night sky lit up with a brilliant hue of red and orange as the entirety of Shibuya saw a sun descending. But I have to show my gratitude. Only by facing you could I reach my zenith. He obstructed much of my vision, but I could catch the descending death behind the hulking figure of Maharaga. In the gaps of your shadows, I have seen light, Maharaga. Smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile to express my appreciation at what I had learned, to express what I had gained. Finally, the meteor arrived, engulfing everything with light and heat. To think a curse and a human together beat the divine. I chuckled. It almost felt like even the divine general at that comment stiffened. "Can't you see it, Maharaja?" I raised my voice, blood pumping harder, breathing labored. "Don't you think so too? This is absolute cinema." Outskirts of Shibuya. A sudden shockwave tore through Shibuya, violent enough to rattle the surrounding structures and send a tremor through everything in its path. Heat waves shattered all over the city, melting the ground and cutting off the electricity. The damage endured by the city was catastrophic. Inside the temporary shelter erected by the Jujutsu tech, Shoko had just finished stabilizing Nanami and Nabito. Nanami's condition was bad but not life-threatening. He'll live, but she doubted he could continue to be a Jujutsu sorcerer after this. Half of his body was burned. Even if she were able to heal most of it, it would leave behind scars and lingering damage, which even her reverse curse technique couldn't heal, was always a possibility. However, even this Shoko would consider lucky in her long experience of treating Jujutsu sorcerers. At least he was alive. This was something she couldn't say with much confidence about the old man, who looked like a fried fish cutlet on her makeshift operational table. Nabito Zenon's condition was outright bad. She wasn't certain whether the old man would make it. Even if he did, he'll be bedridden for life. Not that much of life was left in him after this. Shoko sighed. At times like this, her addiction started to kick in. She was trying to leave smoking, but the stress was getting to her ever since she heard that idiot Satoru had gone and let himself be sealed. The air still carried the faint scent of antiseptic mixed with blood and burnt flesh, an all-too familiar combination in moments like this. She had just reached for her tools again, preparing to begin treating Maki's injuries, when the shockwave hit. The force of it was enough to jolt her hand mid-motion, the loosely held cigarette slipping from her fingers and falling to the ground. The entire tent shook. Shoko paused, staring at it for a brief second before letting out an irritated sigh. This was why she didn't like leaving her operation room back in Jujutsu High and doing field operations. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, brushing a strand of hair back as she glanced toward the direction the shockwave had come from. "What now?" Her voice carried clear annoyance, but beneath it was the weight of exhaustion. Nanami, who was steadily resting after Shoko injected some sedatives into his system to dull the pain, also seemed to jolt up at the sudden shock. Groaning, his single working, I looked around to find he was still in the tent. He half expected to directly wake up in Jujutsu High, or perhaps waking up again wasn't an option anymore. Before anyone else could respond, a figure rushed in from outside. Momo descended quickly on her broom, her expression showing panic, as if she saw the dark mark announcing Voldemort's rise while flying on her broom. "Will you believe me if I say a meteor just hit Shibuya? There's been a massive impact," she said without preamble. Her voice hurried as she stepped off and faced them. For a second, the words didn't quite register. "Sure. Nothing surprises me after I learned a complete sex change is possible with RDC," Shoko shrugged. That brought another round of silence. Why the hell was this woman researching something like that? Ignoring the usual emotionless baddie with a sleep disorder, they focused on the news itself. A meteor sounded absurd, something completely out of place even in a night already filled with chaos. But the evidence was difficult to ignore. The shockwave, the sudden brightness that had briefly lit up the sky, and the lingering heat that now seemed to press against the air all pointed towards something catastrophic. Nearby, Maki shifted, her teeth clenched as she pushed herself up slightly despite the obvious strain it caused her injuries. Due to the urgency with both Nanami's and Nabito's situations, especially Nabito's situation, she was sidelined until now, with basic bandages and a quick dose of RDC keeping her awake and preventing further blood loss. "I don't have time to lie here," she said, her voice tight with restrained anger. "Fix me faster." Shoko shot her a brief glance, unimpressed by the demand. This girl was her primary patient, not because she suffered damage in the mission, but because her training was far more dangerous than the missions assigned to her. The kind of load she put her body through every day, anyone else could have had serious health issues by now. Shoko honestly was a bit envious of that heavenly restricted body of hers. It almost felt like she had endless energy. Sigh. Shoko didn't argue. Instead, she crouched down again, reaching for her tools to resume the work. "Your injuries are minor," she replied, her tone firm as she resumed her work. "However, I advise against straining them further even after I heal you." Of course, the girl wasn't going to listen, but as a doctor, saying so was her duty. And as a cool, refreshing sensation spread all over Maki, healing her, her mind once again wandered to what happened to that boy. If not for him taking that special grade out of the station when he did, everyone here who survived would have died. Maki's fist clenched tight, knuckles shaking at the force. Weak. Why am I still so weak? She would have died if not for that boy. She couldn't do much against that special grade. It irritated her, irked her, and made her mad. "There, you're done." Shoko at last removed her hand. The wound was mostly healed, but still she bandaged it to prevent infection. "Then I'm going." "I'm coming too," Nanami grunted. Now that he was awake, he just couldn't let Maki go alone. "Not you. You're not in any condition to fight." Shoko shook her head and glanced at Maki. "And your condition?" She couldn't even complete before Maki was out of the tent. "I hate teenagers." Outside the tent, Maki was already making her way towards Shibuya, but first she had to find Panda since he had some of her spare weapons. "Don't you dare die on me, idiot. You still have yet to pay for that cursed tool." Yuram stood in still patience, her gaze fixed upon the ruined stretch of Shibuya as she waited for the moment she had long prepared for, reuniting with Sukuna-sama after 1,000 years. The plan was simple. Kenjaku was supposed to feed all the fingers in their possession to Sukuna-sama's vessel, Itadori Yuji. And so in belief she waited, expecting at any moment to feel that overwhelming, unmistakable surge of cursed energy that belonged only to her master. But it never came. Yuram's eyes narrowed slightly as she extended her senses once more, searching for even the faintest trace of Sukuna's presence. At first she traced a bit of it, but it died down almost instantly. "What happened?" was her only question. Did the vessel, Itadori Yuji, manage to suppress Sukuna-sama's soul even after eating all those fingers?
Impossible.
There was something definitely wrong there. A flicker of irritation crossed her otherwise calm expression. Kenjaku's methods had always been unorthodox, but this was beginning to test even her patience. If the vessel had consumed the fingers, then Sukuna-sama should have emerged. There was no logical reason for this delay. "That Kenjaku," she said with a frosty voice. Still, she followed the plan and waited until Sukuna emerged, at least until the sky lit up in the night, that is. The burning hot cursed energy she felt was familiar. The sudden violent shift in the atmosphere drew her attention upward as an immense mass of cursed energy condensed above the city, its presence so dense and oppressive that it distorted the very air around it. "What is that cursed spirit doing?" she growled. Sukuna-sama's vessel was around there. What followed was immediate devastation. Even she, who had remained detached until now, felt the need to move. The moment the impact settled, her senses sharpened, and she immediately recognized something far more important than the destruction itself. The fingers. Their presence was unmistakable at the location where that meteor fell. Kenjaku will have to answer for that. A cold look appeared in her eyes, and forgetting about the plan, she bolted toward the location. There was nothing more important to her than reviving Sukuna-sama. By the time she arrived, she couldn't feel Jogo's cursed energy like earlier. It all was gone. The area had been reduced to a scorched wasteland. Flames still raged across the debris, consuming what little remained, while the heat lingered heavily in the air. Her senses led her to the right location. The fingers were indeed there, her irritation converted into anger. Without hesitation, Yuram raised her hand, and a wave of freezing cursed energy surged outward. Ice spread rapidly, overtaking the flames and suffocating them under layers of frost, though the process demanded a considerable amount of her own energy due to the sheer scale of the destruction. Slowly, the inferno died. The vast burning and melting area was frozen to the core within seconds. Only then did she begin her search properly. The energy she sensed was without doubt Sukuna-sama's. So she searched. Amid the ashes and shattered remains, the fingers were scattered. Every time she had to find each finger, her killing intent toward Kenjaku grew. Once she had all the fingers, she was ready to go find Itadori Yuji. Just as she had turned, a sudden sting at the edge of her senses snapped her back like someone was ready to stab her. Behind her was nothing but ice of her own making. No. She narrowed her eyes, seeing a very faint cursed energy signature. She looked around. However, she couldn't pinpoint the source of that energy. Someone seemed to be here. Her senses told so. She observed for a bit more before finally giving up. Even if there was someone under all this wreckage, chances of survival after being burned alive and frozen to death wouldn't leave much behind in him or her. "Tsh, I don't have time for this," she snorted, and the next second she was gone.
Reverse curse technique hors RCT.
A miraculous feat of curse energy manipulation that inverts the very nature of curse energy itself. Outside a domain, and perhaps even including it, this is single-handedly the most difficult skill to learn. To invert the very nature of curse energy, to heal instead of hurt. That takes more than pure manipulation of curse energy. It needs a deep understanding of Jujutsu and, more than that, chance encounter. If only I could have pulled it off. If so, then perhaps I wouldn't be dying right now. Sigh, ever wondered how it feels like dying? To be in a state where you neither belong to the living nor are gone enough for the underworld to take you. Feels like drowning, like getting slowly sunk into a bottomless, boiling, dark, deep body of water. If you're lucky, then you might see light slowly fade away. If you're not, then darkness has already consumed you to the point there is no way back. Perhaps it's the part where the Reaper, instead of taking us to the other side of the river, ends up throwing us in to fend for ourselves. My body first felt like it weighed a ton. Even after the dark suffocation of water around me, I felt hot, like burning hot, as in I was inside a boiling cauldron, sinking deeper, slowly and agonizingly. If the way to hell was like this, I didn't wish to see the place myself. However, I doubt the man up there sitting on his throne has patience for someone like me in his heaven. Funny, almost. Yeah, I beat Maharaga, pulled it off somehow, and had the fight go my way. But what's the point of doing so when I am not breathing to tell the tale? Sinking in darkness while the light of the surface increasingly fades. No fight left in the body to reach out for it once more. What am I to do? On top of that, there was also this burning sensation all over me. And yet, even after all that, I wished for a miracle, for something to flip the table and say you're not allowed in hell just yet. Just once. A miracle. That's what I wanted at times like this. And perhaps the big man up there heard me. Perhaps he too wasn't ready to end my suffering just yet, or was just way too excited about keeping watching me break some more bones. The burning sensation, as if I weren't sinking in a sea of fire, vanished, replaced by a soothing cold. I felt the boiling water lose its temperature, as if nursing my burns. I felt a tremor run past me as the light on top brightened, ever so slightly. My descent into the abyss halted suddenly, and now I found myself at a bypass. Above me was light, below darkness. It was easy to let go, to send down and be at peace, or I could struggle and face the light. Reach out for it. What an impasse I find myself at. Truly, I for once felt at peace. If not choosing means I could stay here in silence and calm, I'd rather have this. Slowly the cold sank into my body, freezing my burned wounds. In any other case, it might have been a death sentence. However, currently, the cold was the only thing keeping me alive. A miracle indeed. I felt like the heat of my body mixed with the cold outside, both diminishing each other at each other's expense, keeping me safe, keeping me alive. Something shook inside me. A memory cracked up at times like this. It's simple. Curse energy is negative in nature, so to get positive energy out of it, what do we do in math? Multiply two negatives. How easy it is to say that I tried hundreds of times and couldn't do it when my life depended on it. But I recalled how it felt to be healed after winning inside a domain by Maharaga's sword. My mind once again went to the mixing temperature of my burning body and the freezing ice outside. Perhaps it was indeed a miracle that even after so much, I once again reached for my curse energy once more, deep down inside me, and asked, "Follow this feeling." The current around me suddenly got violent. Energy twisted. Curse energy collided into curse energy, trying to find that feeling of healing. Crack. I heard something. I honestly heard something. It wasn't my mind playing tricks. So I continued. Another crack. My body felt a strange sensation. The heat stabilizes the cold. Both mixed into nothingness and blended into me to fix me. And then it shattered into a million pieces. Everything shattered and I fell down with a thud. Gone was the boiling water or the freezing chill. Gone was the light above me and darkness beneath. Slowly and steadily. Gone were the burns, the pain, and the scars. Smoke drifted out of me like a man rising from the ashes of his death. My gone eyes seemed to regain vision. All the haze was cleared. Teeth grew back. Blood seemed to magically appear out of nowhere inside my streams. My skin regrew and hair grew back. Lungs could take air without pain, without feeling like they were pooling with my own blood. My curse energy felt different, not like armor or a weapon in my hands, but like a soft pillow or a lover's hand caressing me. Deep breath in, once more to be certain I wasn't dreaming. This was real. I saw I was surrounded by ice. Real ice, not the one I was hallucinating on my deathbed. For confirmation, I even touched it, and more than the touch itself, the feeling that my hands were sensitive again felt exhilarating. Slowly, the dead burned skin was shed away. What surfaced was unblemished tender skin as if recently grown. Which it did. Seems like I did it, huh? A grin threatened to break out of me. No, not threatening. I was already grinning. In fact, I was laughing. Man, I feel alive. I slowly raised my arms wide, taking everything the world has to offer with close eyes, feeling it, living it. The cold air of Shibuya grazed through my bare body, the ice occasionally giving me chills. Yet the curse energy around me kept me warm and comfortable. RCT.
Reverse curse technique.
God knows how, but I figured it out. I felt like I was on cloud 9. The comfort of an RCT was immense. Only those who had once felt it could understand the feeling. It was like being reborn. No wonder Satoru Gojo felt so high after the first time using RCT. This stuff was addicting. I giggled. Even unknown to me, the RCT cast upon oneself was so potent that it didn't just heal wounds or bring a person back from the gates of hell. However, it also removed fatigue, something that I had stored in tons ever since I came to this world. I took my sweet time, enough time for my high to settle down. The excitement of not dying, to learn something that is considered the pinnacle of jujutsu sorcery like this, was exhilarating. If only I had figured this shit out like 10 minutes ago. How did I even survive those 10 minutes? That was the real question. My domain definitely bore most of the burden for me by that last trade I did. Damage at the back was increased exponentially in exchange for the potency of frontal damage. I was facing the meteor while Maharaga wasn't. Then there was that boy. What was his name again? I can't quite recall, but the blonde was completely gone. Evaporated. Both Maharaga and that boy's body took the major brunt of that attack. I somehow was sheltered behind them and barely survived. If being burned to death slowly instead of instantly is what they call surviving, then so be it. Sigh. Finally off my high horse of being alive and more sturdy than ever, I looked around me. The place was wrecked. No wonder. I knew what I was doing when I asked Jogo to give me his best. The signs of burns were clear enough. However, what confused me was the ice. From where did ice come into this equation?
Jogo's reverse technique?
Nah, can't be. I no longer have that after I used the sacrificial trade. So the only person in JJK with an ice technique came to mind. Yurom. But why would she help me? There was no reason for her to do that. I observed the place again. This didn't look like she was helping me exactly. How does freezing the entire place while leaving me to freeze to death make sense as helping me? My thoughts suddenly came to a halt when another cold breeze ran past me, and now I wasn't using RCT to not notice. The chilly night breeze rattled every bone inside me as I shuddered. It was cold as hell. I looked down only to realize that I was standing in the middle of the street, absolutely naked. All my clothes were burned away. Shit! Did I laugh like a maniac? All naked in the middle of the street? My hands snapped to my groin, eyes darting sideways to find something. Anything to cover before I was tomorrow's headline alongside all the destruction in the city. Naked terrorists spotted in an exhibitionist act after committing citywide bombing. Nope. That's the last thing I need. So I darted with both hands, covering everything I could with them, in search of clothes and to save my modesty. I carefully placed him down and went to work. 2 buttons on his uniform undone and the coat was off him. Gotta say, the boy didn't look like it, but he was rather nicely built underneath. Next were his pants. That was a bit harder to open, opening the waist button with great difficulty. I slowly opened the zipper and tugged down his pants. Turns out taking someone's pants off when they ain't cooperating is really hard. I had to hold him up to tug down the pants, sticking to his legs like a second skin. Sighing, I looked at the unconscious boy's image one more time. Come on, man. It's only fair I get your clothes after you lose that monster on me, even if that was unintentional, I grumbled, hurriedly putting on the stolen uniform. It almost fit me, almost. Turns out that finding clothes in a mostly abandoned city was much harder than it looked, especially when you're butt naked. And that's when my mind told me, why not let the boy because of whom this all had happened pay for it? So I rushed back to Megumi. Poor boy had barely survived Jogo's maximum meteor. If only a bit closer to the crash site, and he would have been toast. Not that I personally have any friendship with him. If anything, I have lingering resentment over what I had to go through. But still, I'm happy that he isn't dead. I hurriedly took his shoes. They were a bit on the bigger side, but they will do. And just like that, I was now a student in Jujutsu High, look-wise at least, and Megumi was the pervert going around naked. He at least had underwear, unlike me. Now, what to do with him? I crouched down and stuck my head to his chest, tuning out the environmental noise to hear his heartbeat. For a second I thought he was a goner, but I heard it, a very faint, almost non-existent heartbeat. It was there. My lips curled up ever so slightly. What do you know? Even without Daddy Sukuna looking out for you, you pulled through yet, potential man. And just as the smile came, it was wiped off as well. Because Megumi's heartbeat was weak, very weak. If I don't do anything, he'll die. Taking him to Shoko is the best option I have, but I don't know where those Jujutsu High staff are. This place is as barren as a desert. Option 2 would be taking him to Maki. Hopefully they are still there and alive. She would know where Shoko is. But would Megumi survive until then? TCH. Seems like I have no other choice but to hope I pull off another miracle. Pray I do, Fushiguro. For your own sake. I reached down to the core of my curse energy, recalling that feeling, and instantly, curse energy manifested into my arms. However, it wasn't normal cursed energy. The color was white. It was calmer and it was brimming with life. Reverse cursed energy. Being able to heal others with reverse cursed energy was an entirely different ballgame than using RCT to heal oneself. Unconfidently, I stared at the healing energy flickering on my hand and then at the half-naked boy. Here goes nothing, I guess. I pressed on his gut and poured the energy into him. I could feel it pass easily enough, but whether it was healing, I had no idea. I kept pouring my positive energy into the boy until I felt it was enough and once again brought down my head near his chest to hear, "Dumb, what do you know, it worked." Even I was surprised I pulled it off, but then again, it might be something related to my technique. Trading away powers and energy, it's not new to me. So perhaps that experience helped me out. There, now we are even. Even if the entire fiasco with Maharaga was not intended by you, saving your life should make us even for taking your clothes. Of course, I had no idea how good or bad the boy's current condition was. I was no doctor, but this has to do for now. But taking him with me all the way until I find Shoko, yeah, it didn't sound very appealing, especially seeing he was naked and I undoubtedly was wearing his uniform. Rumors have started for less in this internet era. But I can't just leave him here either. Can I? Sigh. I picked up the boy. He was surprisingly light for his height and looks, but it could also be perhaps that I was stronger now, which I was. Not physically, but even unconsciously. I was reinforcing myself with C, barely. I couldn't tell. However, the difference was apparent. Those fights really did a number on me, didn't they? Quickly finding a vacant alley while carrying the half-naked prince charming in a princess carry. Before someone spotted me, I laid him down beside a trash can so he was less visible. Sorry for the spot. I promise I'll quickly find your friend and come back to get you or send someone to fetch you. So sit tight until then. Okay? I patted the still unconscious boy's shoulder and got a move on. I finally felt a bit of relief. No curse was breathing down my throat, but the tension was still there, mostly regarding Maki and others. Gotta go back to them quick. My instincts told me otherwise. Why bother with that when I could clearly just get the hell out of the city right now and never look back at this place again? However, the image of Maki shoving me away to take the blade, intended for me, herself, kept flashing inside my mind. The image of Nabito coming to rescue me when Dagon almost had me inside his domain, or Nanami helping me out when Dagon flooded the station. I am a lot of things, but I'm not ungrateful to those who helped me and showed me kindness. I'll take them and Megumi here to Shoko and we are done. I'm out. I grinned. Finally, it seemed things were not crashing down on me like earlier. With extra long steps, I rushed toward the station to unite with Maki and others. Crossing the intersection, I increased my speed a bit. All clear until now. Things are finally looking out for. My legs came to an extreme halt on my increasingly rising speed as all the enthusiasm came crashing down. As soon as I turned around once again, I came face to face with a man with blue hair and a patched face. He seemed to be playing with a toy. The patched face, him being here alone, or even the fact a grown-up man is toying with a toy didn't startle me. What stopped me was where the toy came from. A man was lying nearby, and his head seemed to morph like clay and then be shaped by the patch-faced man to form a toy. The long flesh still connected the toy to the man's body. I just stood there, staring at him, and eventually the patch-faced also turned towards me after a second or two. Our eyes connected, we both blinked. He He seemed to light up upon seeing me. Oh, new toy. My lower lip quivered. Eyes started to sting as mist clouded them. No. I shook my head in defiance. No. 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 This ain't happening. This is not happening. Patch blinked and knocked his head sideways. What's happening? I thought, but continued to shake my head, tears threatening to fall from my eyes. This is cheating. 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 You're cheating, I shouted. Patch's face looked even more confused. For a curse born of humanity's distrust towards itself, Mahito, aka Patchface, claims that he knew humans well. This human might be the only one he couldn't figure out. Why was the man kept on shouting that he had been cheated? He hasn't even done anything yet. And why is he pointing up at the sky when saying that? He kept on shaking his head fanatically, shouting, "It's not fair. Why me again? No, absolutely no. I don't like this game. I won't play this game. Nah, no, never. I'm out. I'm not playing this game." The human shouted hysterically and then turned back, tears flying dramatically as he turned, light shining on them, and then he ran off the other way. Mahito was left behind with a confused face and a cartoonish question mark bouncing near his head. He really didn't get this human. But then a smile appeared on his face, meaning we are playing tag, correct? Okay. You run, and I'll catch. He grinned and bolted right behind the human. Running away. A technique of self-protection, being performed since ancient times. This is an instinctive response to harm and threat ingrained in every sentient life form. Since the dawn of life on Earth, this instinct has been passed on from one generation to the next. Perhaps the most interesting and underrated fact about this technique was that it didn't need any superpowers to perform. Yes, anyone could do it. And so I ran. With everything I had, I turned around and ran. No shame in that. I have no one to answer for my act of cowardice. No one saw, and I doubt anyone will believe a curse anyway. So why put my life on the line when I have the option to just flee? I didn't have that when I fought those cursed spirits in the station. At least I tried though. I couldn't run from Dagon's domain. I couldn't run away from Jogo. If I had done that, then Maki and others would have died. And it's foolish to even think there was an option to run against someone like Maharaga. But now is the perfect time to give this underrated technique a chance. Right? I now have a strong reason to suspect that I'm cursed. I cursed internally and picked up speed, sensing movement behind me. Mahito, aka Patchface, was hot on my heels after me. Over my shoulder, I looked and saw Mahito keeping up while his legs transformed into those of an animal, speed nearly doubling. Damn it! I turned a corner sharply, nearly slipping on loose debris as I forced myself into a narrow alleyway, hoping to break the line of sight. My breathing was erratic, each inhale burning my lungs as I pushed them past their limit. When it comes to sea control, I was really getting good there, but my body, it was in its best shape. I gotta hit the gym if I survive this hellhole, I promise. Oi, wait up for me. This is no fun if you keep running away, you know? Mahito's voice rang, too close to my liking. Suddenly, the cursed spirit's limbs stretched mid-sprint, and they shot out like spikes right at me. I almost got hit in the back, but I made a last-minute turn at the end of the alley. I kicked off the wall to my side, using the momentum to vault over a collapsed section of concrete blocking the alley. My landing was rough, my legs almost giving out beneath me at the absurd parkouring I had to perform without any prior experience. I forced them to keep moving. Why, God, what have I done wrong to you that you're hellbent on making my life miserable? There are several other sorcerers running around Shibuya today, aren't there? So tell me, why is every goddamn curse after my ass? I didn't wish to, but tears of injustice threatened to spill out of my eyes once again. As for Mahito, I wasn't certain, but going by the anime, his appearance, those stitches around his face, and that disfigured human whose face he turned into a toy, there was no doubt that that was the soul-sucking freak from the anime. Just as I was midway down the alley, knocking off anything on the way to slow Mahito down, suddenly I heard the footsteps behind me fade away. I looked over my shoulder and, surprisingly, he wasn't following anymore. Did he lose interest or something? I slowed down slightly, taking long, deep breaths, but was still on the move, not spotting his figure anywhere. A little kindling hope ignited that I lost him. Quickly covering half of the alley, I intended to get out of this place when, at the turning, a hand shot out for me out of nowhere. "Found you." My heart almost gave out the way that hand came to my face. I, by instinct, put all my weight back and almost fell backwards until I used my hands to support my falling body midway. That hand barely missed me. I quickly, in adrenaline, sent a hard kick at Mahito's stomach, kicking the freak away and, at the same time, used that boost to redirect myself the other way. Damn, that was close. I almost died there. My heart could give a race car's engine a run for its money right now. Any more and I don't need curses. I'll be gone by cardiac arrest. I bolted the other way with everything I had, taking extra long leaps to put distance between me and that lunatic. Couldn't let him touch me. No matter what, I can't let him touch me or RDC or curse energy reinforcement. I am a dead man. Even worse, I might become one of those disfigured humans of his. A chill ran down my spine at what kind of threat Mahito was, and he was exactly behind me. That alone gave me a slight speed boost. The biggest problem with this one was that I really can't fight him. Normal attacks do nothing to him. Only attacks that could harm souls would work on him, and I had nothing like that on hand. "Oh, come on. Stop running away. Let's have fun together," Mahito called out from behind. "Like hell I'll believe you." Over my dead body, I cut through another street, weaving between abandoned vehicles and shattered storefronts, trying to create distance, trying to stay unpredictable. My movements were sloppy, far from a professional escape artist, but I didn't have the luxury of precision anymore. There was no bigger motivation than running for your life after all. Mahito, who was chasing just a few meters behind, grinned seeing the human constantly darting left and right to lose himself. Somehow this was fun. "Come on, stop, look. I promise not to do anything to you. Pinky promise?" Mahito shouted. My brow twitched with irritation, like it always does. "Damn you!" I screamed and bolted faster. If anything, this made him grin even wider. Suddenly, his hands once again started to transform and turned into long whips and shot out at me from behind. The attack came so suddenly that the first hit landed exactly at my leg and made me go tumbling down the path, straight into a trash bin. The world seemed to spin around me only for a second before my body was up again, dodging another whip. I poured cursed energy into my legs and jumped with everything I had in me, stepping between the walls surrounding us to escape vertically instead of horizontally this time, and quickly was on the rooftop. Seeing him following through, I just cursed and once again bolted from rooftop to rooftop. This could have been a great cinematic chase scene for a movie or two if not for the very real threat to my life. I hurriedly crossed the building and parkoured into another, Mahito already doing the same on the buildings on the other side. Damn it! I need to lose him somehow. While parkouring away, I saw an intersection and quickly looked behind. Mahito was still behind. I happened to see that place before while running away. Turns out we were running in circles. Good Lord. But I remembered there was a big board on the right there. A plan instantly formed inside my mind, and I intentionally jumped down from the roof of a single-story building, heading right at the intersection. Looking back, I saw Mahito was still there. I had a feeling that he wasn't directly chasing me like someone trying to catch their prey as quickly as possible. He was following, observing, letting me exhaust myself while he closed the gap at his own pace. almost playing around with me. That was even worse. I pushed myself again, a last-ditch effort to speed up and give me just enough time to pull off the stunt I had in mind. Ignoring the way my body protested, I ran and, at the intersection, took a sharp right turn. However, instead of making the turn, I rammed into the pillar that supported a balcony on the first floor of the building in front of me. Without losing speed, I kicked the pillar mid-motion, and with that kick, I took a sharp right turn. The pillar gave way. I poured my CE into that kick, and the entire structure came crashing down directly on Mahito, who was exactly behind me. Mahito saw the balcony falling on top of him but couldn't react in time. Not that it would hurt him, so why bother? He didn't feel a thing. He twisted his soul under the wreckage, and his body followed. Like a snake, he pulled himself out of the rubble without any trouble. However, when Mahito was out, he seemed to have lost his target. A frown appeared on his face. Now he had to go find him again. He looked around. He wasn't trapped inside the wreckage long enough for that human to completely disappear. He must be here. His eyes wandered around. Sure, the human was here, and he tried to sense his curse energy. But then a sharp noise of something hitting something rang out just a little ahead, and his frown turned upside down. "Found you." He grinned and rushed ahead at top speed. And as he vanished further ahead, I, who was watching all this behind a huge board on the second floor of the building, sighed in relief, heart hammering against my chest like it was about to burst out any second. I sighed, finally taking a deep breath in, happy that the plan worked. However, my lips pursed a bit, thinking what that sound was, which wasn't part of the plan. I thought of hiding, yes, but beyond that I had no idea. If not for whoever caused that sound, Mahito might still be here. Perhaps luck decided to show a little mercy on me. Yeah, let's leave it at that. I can't stay here for long. I have to move before Mahito finds nothing there and comes searching for me here again. So I pushed my body up and climbed to the rooftop again, searching where I was. Good news, I was very close to Shibuya Station, and Mahito just went the other way, meaning the entire route was clear. Sighing, I was already on my way there. This time I didn't dally, straight toward the station. On the other side, Mahito rushed toward the sound. He heard the sound first and thought it was a feint to lure him in, but he clearly sensed curse energy there. So he went, and just as he took 2 more turns, right in front of him was the human. He came to a halt, mouth going a bit into an O shape since this wasn't the human he was chasing earlier. This one was a girl. Ah well, I'm into girls anyway. And somewhere else entirely, Maki had just retrieved her spare weapon from Panda, which took longer than usual since locating Panda was no easy task. He was with Kusakabe and very far away. Now she was marching towards the center of the city to find either Megumi or that boy, or perhaps those cursed spirits, whichever she could spot first. Just as she passed multiple alleys, she came to an abrupt halt. She blinked behind her glasses, pondering over what she just saw. She quickly backpedaled to find the very person she was looking for, at least one of them. Lying there in his entire glory, one half-naked Fushiguro Megumi, all knocked out, is behind a trash bin. You kidding me? Maki's eyes twitched with irritation. Recalling the strong man with 0 curse energy who killed Dagon going after Megumi, Maki was worried sick. She looked back at Megumi, all his clothes gone, and wondered, what kind of fight was it? She hurriedly went to check on him. He looked fine to her, just unconscious. And now came the problem of what to do next. She can't just leave him here like this, naked and defenseless. She looked ahead, where that boy or the cursed spirit might be, and then back to Megumi. An internal conflict broke out inside her. And ultimately, she could only curse. Damn it, Megumi. Laughter of despair, a psychological coping mechanism, often called gallows humor, where intense, mirthless laughter emerges from situations of extreme stress, fear, or hopelessness. Something which fit me so well right now that I couldn't stop the mirth exploding out of me. I didn't mean to, but my mind thought it was necessary before I might black out instead. Everything started when I entered the station again, thinking of meeting Maki and others and being done with it. And as soon as I did that, my eyes remained wide open in disbelief at what I was seeing. I couldn't understand how this was possible. I was certain he went the other way, so how come? By the time I reached the underground levels of Shibuya Station, my breathing had already turned uneven, my chest rising and falling in sharp, strained motions as I forced myself forward. To be certain Mahito wouldn't chase me, I ran all the way in the most direct route possible. I probably wasn't as fast as that soul freak, but still I believed I would have seen him coming on the way if he was. The dim artificial lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the empty corridors, and for a brief moment I thought I might have actually managed to create some distance. There he was. How? I have no idea. I didn't even sense his curse energy. When the hell did he come here? Am I missing something here? Mahito didn't rush in. He just looked at me with his usual nonchalant glance. He almost behaved like he didn't even know me until then. Bizarre, if anything, the way he behaved and the way he was here so fast. A chill ran up my spine at how creepy the look he was giving me, smiling with that nonchalant smile of his at me. "Are you here to play?" he asked. There was no overwhelming blast of force, no immediate attempt to rush at me. "Play, huh?" I murmured with a chuckle breaking out of my mouth. "Playing, yes? Ha 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 ha." And that was when I felt like something inside me broke. The sanity holding on thin ice shattered so magnificently that I had to laugh. "Yes, yes. Of course, ha ha ha. God, isn't this what it is for you? A game?" I snapped, voice uneven, anger and despair boiling together into something I didn't wish to address. What could I possibly have said? Complained about why I was the one being targeted like that. Would that have accomplished something? Mahito blinked, looking at the laughing human with complicated eyes. Did the human lose it or something? I kept on laughing, to the point I felt my stomach start to cramp. Irrespective of Mahito calmly watching over me, I laughed. And when I stopped, I had tears trailing down my cheeks. This laughing does that to you. I slowly wiped them away and looked at Mahito, still waiting patiently, standing there, observing me with the same kind of educational curiosity a zoologist might show upon finding a new species of animal or insect. He stood a short distance away, his posture relaxed, his expression almost amused, as if this entire situation were nothing more than entertainment to him, which most likely it was, and that made me even angrier. "My, you look terrible," he said lightly, tilting his head as though genuinely curious. "Did something fun happen before this? Fun? That was fun? This son of a bitch thinks me dying 3 times over and getting chased halfway across the city was fun." I gritted my teeth hard with irritation. The bastard was getting on my nerves. "Fine." "Huh." He blinked. I looked at him with bloodshot eyes, irritation climbing higher and higher. "You want to play, right? I'll play." "Really?" Mahito's eyes shone like someone offered him a new toy. "Yeah." I smiled back. "Let's have a good time together. I don't care. I'm punching him to Sunday. No more running. If I don't get something to punch right now, then I'll explode." My eyes fell onto his hands. Those were dangerous. If he touched me even once, it was over. My rational mind, if there was any left, screamed at me that this was suicide, which it most likely was. But damn it, I would rather die than keep moping about my disastrous luck. Mahito moved first, his body shifting forward in a smooth, almost lazy motion, but the speed behind it was anything but casual. His arm extended, fingers stretching unnaturally as he reached for me. and I reacted immediately, throwing myself backward just as his hand passed through the space where my chest had been a fraction of a second earlier. Too close, and I knew he was faster. This was a very bad idea. I didn't wait for him to recover from the motion. I stepped in. If I kept running, I would just die slower. I have to hit, so I punched. Cursed energy surged through my arm, but this time it wasn't the same raw, instinctive flow I had been relying on before. I forced something else into it, something far more difficult to maintain, something that fought against my instincts instead of following them. Reverse cursed energy. My fist connected with his side, and the reaction was immediate. The experience I had fighting Maharaga, seeing how he actually output raw positive energy as a weapon, surely had motivated this move. Mahito's expression twisted like a yo-yo, changing colors faster than the neon lights of Shibuya, his body recoiling as if struck by something far more dangerous than a normal attack. The point of impact distorted violently, his form rippling unnaturally as if it was rejecting what I had just forced into it. Curses are beings made of curse energy, and reverse curse technique is the exact opposite of that. Needless to say, for curses, reverse curse energy acts like poison. Ironic, since it was nothing but pure elixir and life-saving grace for humans. He staggered back a step. The impact area was completely burned off, smoking while sizzling hot. Mahito's eyes widened at the impact he just received and then at me. However, instead of the angry look I was expecting out of him, what I got was a sinister grin. The distortion smoothed out almost instantly as his body reshaped itself, the damage disappearing as if it had never been there. He straightened, his hand brushing lightly over the spot where I had struck him, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to something more interested. "That's new," he murmured. My lips pursed up. For sure I thought that would help, but apparently not. RCT can only damage his physical body. His soul was completely intact. If only my output with RCT was higher like Maharaga's sword, then surely I could have outright evaporated his entire body. Nothing to come back from. Sigh. For once, anger started to settle down and I realized just how badly I was suited to fight this curse. Earlier decision to run away was far wiser, but I was nothing else but stubborn, especially after so much had happened. I stepped forward again, forcing my body to keep moving despite the strain, despite how unnatural it felt to maintain the flow of reverse cursed energy through my fists. Every second I used it drained me faster. RCT wasn't just new to me, but it was also harder, much harder to maintain than normal curse energy manipulation. So I made sure to make my punches count. I swung again. He avoided it this time, his body bending at an unnatural angle as my fist passed just inches from his face. His counter came immediately, his hand snapping toward my shoulder, and I twisted away just in time, feeling the air shift as his fingers missed me by a hair's breadth. Death was inches away and I was playing hero. How stupidly hopeless. But the thought of giving up didn't cross my mind. I really wanted to punch the bastard in a way he could feel it. I pressed forward again, throwing another punch, then another, each one reinforced with reverse cursed energy, each one forcing him to adjust, to avoid, and to reshape himself around the attacks. They merely touched him, and the damage would always heal up as soon as it was done. That cursed technique of his was broken AF. No, I can't keep this up. I'll exhaust myself using RCT before I even land a single punch at him. I grumbled, seeing the problem with my strategy. Meanwhile, Mahito wasn't giving me any time to think. Every movement he made carried the same threat, every reach of his hand a potential end. I had to watch him constantly. Suddenly, his hands started to elongate, turning into long snake-like vines, shooting right at me. Shit! I hurriedly backed up, dodging the hands the best I could. When it happened, I was so focused on the hands that I almost forgot where Mahito himself was. Using his elongated hands, He had distracted me and suddenly appeared right behind me. Time slowed down. His tongue came out, elongated as well, and formed a third hand in the air. As gross as it was, the grossness of the act never crossed my mind because that was an incoming death sentence for me. He had gotten me at point-blank range. Nobara was moving carefully and relentlessly through the narrow alleyways of Shibuya. Her deployment was done after Gojo went ahead and had himself killed. While the boys went to save that idiot, she, with most of the Kyoto students, was clearing out any cursed spirits out in the city. Of course, she was strictly asked to handle only spirits near grade 2 or semi-grade 2. She wished to go with both Yuji and Megumi. However, she herself knew that she couldn't keep up with those monsters. Her technique wasn't suitable for direct open combat. Still, it rubbed her the wrong way. Currently, she was in an alley, chasing down weaker curses who escaped the station and wandered off around it. It took her some time, but she finally got the little midget, making her sprint for the last 10 minutes. Honestly, she would rather come here in Shibuya for shopping instead of exorcising curses. Sigh. As she was ready to head back, a strong curse energy signature washed over her, making her stiffen for a second. The curse energy was strong, definitely not a weak curse. She immediately went on the defensive, and soon enough, the reason for her caution was right in front of her when she saw him coming out of a dimly lit alley. She recognized him immediately. Yuji had told her about a patch-faced curse spirit. This was him. "Oh, it's a girl," the curse said with a little disappointed expression. But then he immediately lit up. "Meh, I like girls anyways." He grinned, which gave Nobara a creepy feeling. Yuji told her that this one was a special grade. That alone gave her every right in any protocol Jujutsu High had to abandon the mission. However, she stayed. And honestly, she didn't care. She was still going to kick his ass. "You must be one of his friends," he said, his tone light, almost conversational. Nobara didn't bother replying. Her grip tightened around her hammer as she immediately closed the distance, nails already prepared between her fingers. If this was the curse Yuji had warned her about, then hesitation wasn't an option. Mahito moved just as she attacked. His body twisted unnaturally, bending away from her strike in a way that shouldn't have been possible. Yup, there was no doubt. This was the curse Yuji talked about. Nobara reacted instantly, ducking under the reach and rolling past him, barely avoiding contact. Yuji told her not to let that curse touch her. Little did she know that this wasn't the version of the cursed spirit Yuji exactly warned her about. This here was merely a clone. She pushed herself back to her feet, not giving him time to press the advantage, and swung again, forcing him to shift his position once more. Both darted around each other, Nobara throwing her needles at the curse while nothing seemed to affect him. This wasn't a normal fight. She couldn't let him touch her. None of her own attacks were working. "Ah! This is irritating," she growled. Mahito lunged again. This time, she let him come closer. At the last moment, she activated all the needles she had used earlier, currently scattered on the ground, to stop his movement. This was her do-or-die moment. If this attack didn't work, then she doubted she could beat him. If not for this one technique, she might not even try to fight Mahito. Mahito himself was confused. What was the point of stopping him again? Nobara didn't explain it. The girl believes in action over words anyways. So, while Mahito was unmoving thanks to all the needles she had drilled into him, she went ahead and hammered one more needle right at Mahito's forehead. Once again, it did nothing to Mahito, because the real attack was the following one. Curse energy flashed around her as her hammer came crashing down on that one needle on Mahito's forehead. Resonance. MCPOV. I saw Mahito's tongue, hand drawing closer, death flashing in front of my eyes. I tried to move in time but couldn't. The attack was almost point blank. Seems like my suffering ends here. Couldn't help but sigh. But then I felt a shift in my curse energy, like something inside of me had just gotten loose all of a sudden, and then something happened that completely baffled me. Out of nowhere, spikes protruded from Mahito's body, even the tongue, which transformed into a hand. If I were confused and surprised enough to freeze for a heartbeat, I could only expect what Mahito might be feeling. But then, at the right time, the legendary instincts that were responsible for my continued survivability acted up once again. Seeing him paralyzed there, my hands unconsciously drew back and I punched with everything I had. By instinct, I didn't even use RDC so the punch could actually hurt him. I just punched him like I have been doing with every other cursed spirit. Next second, a booming sound was heard. Black spread and space vibrated. Black flash. My mind snapped into the zone like someone injected highly concentrated caffeine into my system. Mahito was thrown back with that attack. However, I didn't follow him. My mind seemed to be overclocking, trying to find a way to hurt the soul leech, and with the black flash, that fog between me and the answer finally disappeared. Instead of taking advantage of his momentary lapse of balance, I just stood there, contemplating my own options. I figured out in that 1 second of clarity, which seemed to have left answers behind for me. I watched as Mahito slowly pulled himself back together, his body reshaping to heal the wounds. I couldn't recall why this would suddenly happen. Don't remember watching this in the anime. However, it's not like I remember everything perfectly. Might have missed some details. I steadied myself, entering into the fighting stance I had developed over the span of the last hour or so of being beaten to a pulp. Counters ran inside my mind. I steadied my breath. I fully expected him to launch himself at me any second. But what happened next almost gave me a cardiac arrest. He got up, wiped the blood from his mouth, took a fighting stance, smiled, and just as he took the fighting stance, he lost it, confusing me, turned around and ran. Let me repeat, he turned around and ran. For a second, I just stood there, staring in disbelief as he bolted down the alley without a word, moving with surprising speed for someone who had been so eager to fight just moments ago. Something in my head snapped at that. I felt my blood pressure might just cause me to lose consciousness, and before I could even think it through, I was running right behind him. Stop right there, you annoying soul sucker. You don't get to run away after all this. Come back. After a few sharp turns through the twisting paths of the station, I followed him, not letting the curse out of my sight. But then something even stranger happened. Another figure stepped into view ahead, and it was him, Mahito, completely identical, like I was watching his image in a mirror, running straight towards us, and behind him was a girl with a Jujutsu high uniform and a hammer in hand. I knew who she was. And at this moment, memories, which I had trouble figuring out how much of the canon was intact after I messed it over, and vice versa. The memories snapped into place because there were many fighting scenes to recall them all, but key moments like what is about to happen now, I remember them clearly. I saw both Mahitos run past each other, the one I was chasing going after the approaching Nobara. Oh no! Shoes, sandals, footwear. Since ancient times, they have been used by humans to protect their legs from uneven land, spikes, dirt, and weather changes, and even as a fashion statement. However, there are a few other uses as well, like in the hand of an angry parent, where it would be a deadly weapon. And at times like these, I felt everything slow down upon Mahito's hands drawing close to Nobara's face, and I could feel it. Having nothing else to stop him with, I did the only thing I could. I intentionally lost the shoe I stole from Megumi, which was already loose to begin with, and with all my might, flicked it hard with a kick towards them. Just as Nobara's face was almost touched by Mahito, a curse energy-infused projectile appeared between them out of nowhere, hitting right on Nobara's beautiful face and sending the stylish girl flying back with a deafening sound of cheek clapping. Nobara's entire face distorted into various shapes if seen in slow motion, most likely generating comments like, "Not cute at all," if this were a YouTube video. Bang! Nobara was almost knocked out. I was even surprised that the girl was still groaning and clutching her face with curses flowing out of her mouth instead of hammer and nails. Still conscious. In my defense, I was aiming for the curse, I said with an apologetic expression. Mahito had barely missed her face and had run past her with his inertia. He looked at the discarded shoe and then at my leg with a pouty face, like saying, "That's not fair." Nobara finally removed her hand from her face. A reddish print of the underside of the shoe was left behind, almost reminding me of this one character from that pirate anime I couldn't recall the name of. Damn, perhaps not all the memories were back. "You!" She fixed her deadly eyes on me, blood running down her nose, and that made my own blood lose a degree of its temperature. Sorry, but I honestly was aiming for the curse. I gave her my best apologetic look while trying to avoid her deadly glare, which promised pain and vengeance. "Do you know how much it costs to get a facial spa in Tokyo? Do you have any idea?" She raged. For a second, Mahito was forgotten. She got up like nothing happened and marched up to me, hammer in hand, like a war general on the march. "And who are you?" I don't remember any student in Jujutsu High besides those I have already met before. Her eyes narrowed, giving me that suspicious look. "Do I look like a student to you? You're not? Then why are you wearing the Jujutsu Tech uniform? Even Gojo wears it." I shrugged. Nobara paused, having nothing to refute that, but she once again honed in on me. "Don't try to change the subject. You don't look that old, most likely my age. So, tell me, who are you?" My eyes were flickering between her and Mahito, who seemed to be patiently waiting for us to finish. Gotta say, even this world's villains are different. At least they are more understanding. A curse made of human behavior indeed. "Can we focus on the curse for now, please?" I said and shamelessly refused to look back at her. Eventually, she had to break off her glare, but not before she stated, "We are not done about this matter. You're paying for my next spa visit." And there it was, another debt to a girl I barely knew. I slowly drew closer to Mahito while lazily taking off the other shoe as well, maintaining balance when the fight breaks out and all. Name's Nobara Kujisaki. First year at Tokyo Jujutsu Tech. Surprisingly, Nobara walked beside me, not planning to let me handle the curse alone. And knowing that she was among the few who could actually hurt Mahito, I was all for it. We walked a little further until a tick mark formed on her face. "Oi, I just introduced myself. It's bad manners if you don't do that, you know?" He chided with irritation building in. I pursed my lips. I still couldn't remember my name. For some unexplainable circumstances, I can't disclose my name right now. That only seemed to deepen her suspicion. "Tish. Whatever. Don't get in my way," she snorted and turned to Mahito. "Come on. At least a little thank you for saving your life." I never said those words, but I wanted to. Such a bye. Before I could complete that line of thought, Mahito had decided that he was done watching. He was already next to me with all the intention to end it in one go. A sneak attack. It was so quick that Nobara's earlier nonchalant and petty attitude all but evaporated. "Look out!" she shouted, but it was already too late. The hand drew near and landed right on my chest with a soft thump. Nobara, for all her eccentric personality, wasn't dumb enough to not know what I was trying to do back there. I saved her life, and now upon seeing I might be the one dying, her panic blossomed full-blown. Nails were already between her fingers, ready to hammer them down at Mahito's very soul. But before she could do that, Mahito himself seemed to lose his earlier mirth. Why is it not working? He murmured, palm digging ever so slightly deeper into my chest to make sure the contact was established. I wasn't just standing around either. Before he could move back, my punch was already at his face. It landed right on his face, deforming it and sending the curse back with enough power that he hit the wall with a sickening thud. Mahito's body slumped down, shaken. His head felt like it was spinning from that direct hit. His hand subconsciously came to his face and wiped something leaking there. Blood. It was his blood. That first actually hurt him. You know, every technique has its weakness. We just have to find it. I replied with a grinning face, having recently figured out exactly how I can hurt him. Even Nobara on the side raised her brows at this. So besides herself and Yuji, there was someone else who could beat this dude. Mahito's spinning vision finally came to a stop and his eyes fixed onto me like a prey that had suddenly found its target had fangs of its own. His eyes darted around me, trying to figure out how I hurt him until he sensed it. That technique. His eyes narrowed with a hiss. Yup, just picked it up from your friend Jogo. Took me a while to figure out, but it wasn't that hard. I shrugged, in turn making Mahito frown at the revelation. Domain amplification, he said with a spat. A big bright smile plastered on my face. Yup, it's a pretty nice technique once you try it out. I grinned, confusing Nobara, who had no idea what this technique was. Jogo knew the technique. Most likely he learned it to deal with Gojo specifically. Since I had his powers and memories, I, in concept, knew how to use the technique. I could have immediately used the technique if I still possessed his powers, but no can do. Instead, I had to figure it out by recalling how I saw him using it and the intel I saw inside his memories. Since the technique can bypass Gojo's infinity by negating his technique completely, I had a suspicion that it would work on Mahito as well. And my assumptions were correct. Mahito is keeping the shape of his soul intact so he doesn't take damage even when his body is injured. But if domain amplification can negate that effect, it will hurt him. Oi, are you two done talking? I have other places to be. She butted in and pointed at me. You can hurt him, right? Yeah. I nodded. Good. Then you're not completely useless. I just rolled my eyes at this. The girl sure has an attitude problem. Now we are gonna do it how it's been taught to us at school. She smirked. I raised my brows, honestly surprised they actually learned something in that school. The anime sure didn't show everything. And what's that? She grinned. We're gonna jump him. My smile froze. Of course, I had my hopes up for nothing. Domain amplification, a technique that creates a fluid-like domain around a user without any barrier and no innate technique etched inside of it, making a hollow domain that negates every other technique upon contact. It's a highly difficult technique to master, and many don't even know that a technique like this exists. It's also worth saying that this is the only technique, besides a real domain's sure-hit effect, which can touch Satoru Gojo and bypass his infinity. And now I have figured it out. It was unsteady, but seeing Jogo use it, making his memories and skills mine for a little while, was enough to get a feeling for me to recreate it, though that last black flash definitely helped. I sent a blistering punch at the special grade curse's side, while another hammer layered with curse energy stopped him from dodging my attack. 3 nails were hammered inside his head in a matter of seconds after my punch connected, and Mahito almost toppled over due to the sudden pain. It was right to say that people who don't experience much pain are usually the most prone to it, just as it was right to say that Nobara Kujisaki was no rookie. She might lack physical power and that raw destruction, but her basics were refined, and more than anything, her mindset was just right to be a jujutsu sorcerer. Resonance. She snapped her fingers and the 3 nails exploded with curse energy, doing deep soul damage to Mahito, leaving him completely disoriented. The moment we understood that both of us could actually hurt him, the fight changed completely, and neither of us hesitated even for a second before we jumped him together. It honestly felt so nice having someone to fight with, taking half the work out of it. And of course, it felt good doing the jumping for once. I stepped forward first, forcing cursed energy to wrap tightly around my entire body as I maintained domain amplification. The sensation was still unfamiliar and difficult to sustain. However, slowly I was getting the hang of it. Since domain amplification can negate techniques on contact, it also negated Mahito's soul manipulation and actually could hurt him. My fist landed directly on his face, making him cough a mouthful of cursed blood. It wasn't even red but black and purplish. At the same time, Nobara circled to the side, already preparing her nails, her eyes locked onto Mahito. Gotta say that the girl had really good battlefield awareness. She figured out that I was a complete rookie when it comes to actual fighting experience and was helping me land my fists at times, albeit with a lot of her usual sarcasm. If only I had my special grade curse energy like earlier, I would have been doing far more damage by now. Nobara sent a few more nails flying at him, but Mahito reacted this time, moving out of the way just in time. However, he couldn't move further before I had my fist driven at him, forcing him to block instead of reaching out, and the moment his attention shifted to me, Nobara struck again. A nail embedded into his arm, and before he could reshape himself, she activated her technique, the resonance tearing into him in a way that visibly disrupted his form. Mahito staggered back with visible haggardness on his face. His output was dropping, I could feel it. His body twisted unnaturally as the damage struck deeper than the surface, and for once, he didn't recover instantly. "You're really strong, Ms. Kujisaki." I smiled, seeing the progress. "Huff, you bet I am. You're not half bad yourself, if you cared to learn where to throw your punches and when." Was it wrong to say that I was getting used to her sass? Oh well, she has always been that sassy girl in the show. I just shrugged it off as long as she was helpful in this fight. Mahito tried to retaliate, his arms stretching toward Nobara in a sudden, aggressive motion, but I was already there. Mahito had tried to attack me 2 more times already, and it didn't work. While domain amplification is taxing in cursed energy, especially my current smaller reserve after I sacrificed both Jogo and Dagon, it was a bit tiring on the brain front. But the effect spoke for itself. It blocked all of Mahito's attacks, so in this case, where he is getting his ass handed to him, the only available move for him is to take out Kujisaki first to lessen his load. I won't let him, though, intercepting him before he could reach her. My shoulder slammed into him, pushing him off balance, and I followed up with another strike, forcing him further back. While my technique left much to be desired, I was building an instinctive intuition towards fighting the more I fought. Nobara didn't waste the opening. She moved in again, hammer swinging as she drove another nail into him at close range, while at the same time I hit Mahito's legs to disable him. Resonance. The explosion rippled through his body, distorting him violently, and for the first time since the fight began, Mahito was not healing. The damage had surpassed the point that his output had declined to a dangerous level. Healing right now meant he wouldn't be able to fight later on. He breathed hard, almost panting. His body looked weakened after several critical strikes on him, but his eyes held danger, which sent alarms ringing down my system. That look was familiar, so very much familiar. It was like I was watching myself when I was getting pushed against the wall earlier. My body froze as hairs stood on end, telling me there was danger ahead and asking me to reassess whether I should approach this wounded beast recklessly or wait for him to bleed out. Unfortunately, Nobara didn't have this instinctive intuition. She didn't even stop when I froze mid-fight. Nails ready between her fingers, she was already moving towards Mahito. My instincts screamed, and my hands shot out at her. I was so cautious that I didn't even see where my hand landed. It was big and soft, and I might have squeezed it once or twice just to know that I stopped her. "Where do you think you're touching, you bastard?" Her eyes took on that sharp, dangerous look that only girls could pull off. Guilty as charged I was, but the majority of my attention was still on Mahito. I just tuned her out until I felt it. The spark. Every jujutsu that exists in this world starts with a spark. A spark of cursed energy, which ripples out, is an indicator of sorts. Most people who are efficient at cursed energy manipulation can sense it. Like how to do before the exchange event, felt that Megumi was about to use a powerful technique or move. It was intuitive. Oi! How long are you going to keep your hand? My hands clenched, and regardless of that, I was fondling her breast. I forcefully pushed her behind me. The moment she was behind me, I let go and her hand covered her chest, eyes glaring daggers at my back. If I didn't know better, then I might have had a few nails hammered at the back of my head by now. You bastard! Nobara shouted, eyes slightly misty at the action and face red from the noise she made. Ready to teach this boy a lesson when suddenly her body froze since she felt a malicious, cursed energy erupt from the special grade curse. Mahito's eyes were still glaring dangerously at us, and finally, with a grin on his face, he opened his mouth and my instincts were proven right. Domain expansion. Hands formed inside his mouth, making signs for his domain. Nobara's complaint and anger died down as her eyes snapped back to Mahito with the understanding of what was about to happen. Her eyes widened and body stiffened. I knew this would happen. That's why I had not used my own domain until now. That, and I was trying to give my broken brain some rest after all those domain spamming. But I guess I got no other option now. My hands collided midway, forming a familiar sign. Domain expansion. What? If earlier Nobara was stunned, then now she was bulging her eyes out. He had a domain of his own? Who was she messing with all this time? And as if a signal had been given, both of us opened our domains. Self-embodiment of perfection. Death trade. Darkness surged on one side, while on another, multiple hands transformed the terrain into something artistically grotesque. The barriers of our two domains erected and smashed in the middle, racing for dominance. For once I was surprised to see that my domain in this case wasn't the inferior one. It didn't just hold on, but it was going neck and neck against Mahito's. One might think that Mahito would have a better domain among all the disaster curses since he could replicate Satoru Gojo's feat of a 0.2-second domain against Aoi Tadou and Yuji Itadori. But nope, here it was, both domain barriers clashing with each other right in the middle while the sure hit effects from both sides were equally refined. Did my refinement increase? I couldn't say, it was just an abstract concept to begin with. And once I knew my domain wasn't going to be crashing anytime soon, I didn't care much about it either. I only opened it knowing I wouldn't be landing it, just holding Mahito's own domain back. Instead, I looked around. Nobara had been dragged inside the domain as well. That gave me a little edge. As for the girl herself, she had long lost her voice. A chill ran down her spine when she felt the overwhelming sensation of two domains clashing. Shifting her eyes from Mahito to me like we were freaks. How come you never told me you could do this? She complained, eyes still roaming all over the two clashing domains. This was the first time she saw it. Mahito's side had a lot of creepy hands, while the boy's side, the one where she was glad to be in, wasn't that much better. It was dark, a darkish fog lingering around like death lingering over the place, and behind the boy was a towering cross with two weight plates hanging on each side. It was ominous and it sent chills running down her spine just looking at that cross. I ignored her. I had more important things. My eyes roamed further, taking in the entire domain. He isn't here. I grumbled, irritation rising inside me. This means I need for my domain to completely land and finish. How irritating. What's the point of that when I can already set trades when that happens? Mahito looked around the domain and slowly closed his mouth, letting go of the hand signs that formed in his mouth. I did the same as my hands dropped down to my sides. Since both sides' refinement was almost equal and the barriers were incapable of pushing forward, this left us with only one option. Damage the other until either he is dead or incapable of holding the domain and their own domain prevails. Nobara, be careful. Inside my domain, I can't use domain amplification, meaning all the damage has to be dealt by you. And also remember, if I were to take too much damage, the domain would collapse and we both would be cooked. So don't hold back. I stated as clearly as I could, without even looking at the girl. This was true. Using domain amplification and expansion together was impossible. They were literally of opposite natures. Though knowing Gijakatami, he might intentionally make someone like Gojo or Sukuna pull off crazy feats like that for them to aura farm, breaking rules like cheaters. Nobara for a second looked baffled, but quickly enough her sassy side took over. You don't have to tell me, idiot. Sit back and watch how professionals do things. He snorted, already with nails and hammer out, ready to give Mahito hell. I smirked. I honestly was happy that Nobara was here, because I otherwise would have no way to hurt Mahito inside the domain. Ladies first then. I made way. She just huffed. Don't think I have forgotten about what you did. We are not done about that. For now though, just follow my lead, she said and marched forward. Shaking my head at her antics, I just followed. Yes, ma'am. And with that said, both of us were once again on Mahito. Curse born from humans' distrust of each other was no different. His hands formed into blades and he rushed at us with equal ferocity. I was the first to move, faster than anyone else, closing the distance before Mahito could dictate the pace and creating an opening for Nobara since now she was the primary and only damage dealer. And Mahito seemed to realize that as well. He was coming at me now with reckless ferocity. I threw a punch, forcing him to react, but he slipped around it with unnatural flexibility, his technique shifting his body in ways it was almost impossible to even comprehend. And knowing he wasn't going to take damage, this entire showcase was either to throw me off guard and use his technique on me or go after Nobara. I was right. His arm stretched toward me in the same motion while his other arm elongated and snapped towards Nobara. I pulled back immediately, barely avoiding contact. Nobara was the same. She avoided the incoming hand at the last second, but that was where we were wrong. Hand ended up splitting apart when it reached Nobara and blocked all of her escape routes. I poured cursed energy into my arms and grabbed onto the elongated arm of Mahito and yanked it hard enough to shift the multiple extensions of Mahito's arms, moving towards Nobara in time, leaving a tiny opening for her to slip in, and she did just that. Mahito shot his other hand once again at my side, but I slipped away, revealing Nobara, who was right behind me, with hammer and nails in her hands. The girl needed no permission to strike, and she did just that when I opened an opening for her. She struck from the side, driving a nail into him before activating her technique, the resonance visibly distorting his form again. But even then, he endured it, his body reshaping but much slower since his earlier damage accumulation and opening of the domain had stretched his brain a little too much. He snapped at us, going directly for Nobara, seeing the girl could still hurt him, but I covered her just in time, going for the good old-fashioned charge tackle to disbalance him, and immediately moved back so he didn't get any chance to touch me. Nobara charged in right after me, needles flying at Mahito. However, these other attacks of hers didn't do any damage. Only her resonance technique had the power to damage Mahito's soul, and for that, she needed a direct hit. The fight settled into a tense rhythm where neither side could fully commit. I had to hold back, my primary role being a distractor, covering for Nobara while trying to find an opening for her. Her role was to deal damage, purely damage, while keeping pressure on Mahito. And she had the same problem as me. If she got touched by Mahito's palm, it was over. As for Mahito, he was getting caught in the grind between us. One touch, that's all he needed, but it was extremely hard when both humans were covering each other so well. The back and forth continued, Our motto was simple: attack if it connects, and if not, then focus entirely on evading. Time was on our side. Sooner or later, both domains would collapse. While I was feeling the dips in my reserves, Mahito would be the same. Outside the domain, I can once again damage him, so evading mattered more. It was a good plan until Mahito broke it. He suddenly shifted his focus entirely toward Nobara, his movement accelerating as he lunged straight for her, his hand outstretched with clear intent. The most troublesome thing about this enemy wasn't just his technique making him immune to most attacks, but the fact that even one touch from him was lethal and his ever-shifting body was hella confusing to get a read on his movements. If you're not someone named Yuji Itadori, fighting this guy one-on-one was a death sentence. I reacted without thinking when his arms snapped at Nobara, stepping in between them just in time while forcefully pushing Nobara away, knowing full well what that meant. His hand made contact with my arm. Nobara's eyes widened when she registered what happened. Mahito had an ecstatic look in comparison. However, I was a bit faster. I poured a ton of reverse cursed energy into my arm as fast as possible. Before even Mahito's cursed technique could take effect, it was pouring positive energy into his hand. As a result, both our hands were thrown back with an erupting force of two opposite kinds of energy colliding. Pain rang inside me when I felt it. My hand was burned due to that sudden output of CE and RCT. Nobara visibly sighed upon seeing my hand intact. Her eyes shifted back to Mahito. Damn you! This entire fiasco gave Nobara her opening. And the girl wasn't someone to hesitate. Her technique activated the moment she had the chance, striking directly at Mahito. His body twisted again, more violently this time, and before he could recover, I forced a reverse curse technique through my body, repairing the damage just enough to move, just enough to act. I felt it, my cursed energy reserves dipping more. With the domain, Jogo's, and Dagon's powers gone, and that earlier burst of RCT to fight him off, I had burned a big portion of my reserves. Panting, I still stepped up as soon as my hand was recovered. In one motion, I stepped forward and drove my fist into his face. He was the same. Pain rang inside him from Nobara's earlier resonance, and he had to pour that anger somewhere. So seeing me coming next, he let go of the defense, knowing I wouldn't be doing anything, and struck back at me. Both of our fists passed each other and connected with each other's faces in perfect synchronization. For a fraction of a second, everything aligned. Time seemed to slow down for a while. A strange and familiar vibration appeared around us, and then, black flash. Not just me, but he too. I felt my vision go blind, for the first time being at the receiving end of a black flash. And then everything spun, the world, me, and the domain. The impact distorted the space around us as both blows landed simultaneously, cursed energy erupting at the point of contact with perfect timing. Black lightning flashed violently. The force of it shattered the fragile balance of the domain clash, and I felt the structure around us collapse almost immediately. Both of us were sent flying back, outside the now crumbling domains. I stopped sliding across the surface, Nobara rushing towards me, while Mahito was much like me, thrown backwards. "Hey, are you all right?" she asked, looking at me with a bit of concerned eyes, which was quite foreign on her face. "You know, you look cute when concerned." "Heh. Let me tell you, I always look cute. Thank you very much." She snorted immediately, but the tension was gone from her face. Not mine, though. That punch rattled me from within. The world still felt like spinning. I wished to pour a bit more of RCT on my body to flush out any lingering damage. However, I was dangerously low on CE, and RCT was a cursed energy drain. Not to mention, I had a feeling that our trouble had just increased by the way Mahito was slowly getting up with that creepy smile on his face. For someone who had not landed a black flash, the difference between him and someone who had experienced the phenomenon before is extreme. The understanding of one's own curse technique and energy after a black flash improves drastically. If Mahito was already giving us this much trouble before this, then now I could only wonder how bad it would be. I shifted my eyes back to Nobara. The girl also seemed to have realized the matter. If I wasn't wrong, she herself had experienced a black flash before. That only left that bumgamy. A small voiceless chuckle left my throat. Mahito, on the other side, was laughing now like high on ecstasy. I knew the feeling from the first time landing a black flash. If it was his first time, I couldn't recall entirely. And that laughter was enough to say trouble was brewing. He took out some small items from his pants, didn't even know he had a pocket on that thing, and slammed them to the ground. The next second, multiple disfigured humanoids came alive, rushing at us from all sides. Knew it. I pushed my body up, going for Nobara to get her out when I heard it. Clap. Clap. An act of applause among humans for as long as anyone could remember. It brings joy and attention upon hearing it. For me, it just brought confusion. 1 second I was tackling Nobara away from the incoming swarm of enemies, and the next I was lying on top of her in a completely different location. Mahito wasn't that different either. 1 second Mahito was ready to rip the 2 Jujutsu sorcerers to shreds, and the next, they were gone, vanished right in front of his eyes. I found myself on the ground, on top of a baffled Nobara, our breaths mixing into each other. That's how close we were. For a second, we both froze at the sudden shift in situation, eyes looking directly at each other with confusion and a bit of uncertainty, which neither of us could point out. I could feel her breasts pressed up against my chest. Both of us blinked in confusion while a crashing sound arrived from a little further away. I moved my head and saw it was Mahito, crashing into the building where we previously were. What the? Seems like I am late. Here I was looking for my brother, and I found another special grade wreaking havoc. My luck. A deeper voice rang out in the station, and everyone's attention moved to him. It was an extremely well-built man with a scar on his face, and I instantly realized who he was. Aoi todo. My eyes lit up. Him being here was a really good sign, and half of my tension was relieved just looking at him. A proper first-grade sorcerer. Oi, what do you think you're doing, you idiot? Nobara snapped, clearly annoyed how I was still not moving from on top of her. Almost forgot about her. Sorry, but I thought you wouldn't move in time, so I tackled you away. I sheepishly smiled and got up, extending my hand. She snorted but, surprisingly enough, took it and pulled herself up. I clearly misjudged her strength and potential weight, or perhaps I was still lightheaded after tanking that black flash right to the freaking face. Instead of me pulling her up, she managed to pull me down. I stumbled and both of our heads connected midway, creating a cracking sound, which I was certain I needed a healthy dose of RCT for. What's wrong with you? She snapped, clutching her own head with irritation. We were back where we started from, on top of each other and the ground. Sorry. I lost balance. Huff. She snorted, pushing me aside and getting up herself. Kujisaki, do you know where my brother Itadori is? Tadu slowly walked towards us, removing his upper clothes as he walked, clearly getting ready to throw hands. I thought he would be with you. Nobara genuinely sounded surprised. Where could that idiot be? Nobara clicked her tongue with irritation. I blinked myself. I clearly recalled this was Yuji's and Tadu's fight in the anime. So if Yuji wasn't here and I was the one dealing with both Jogo and Maharaga, then where is he? I tried to recall what I could have changed, but before that Tadu's attention shifted towards me. And you? Yes, I snapped at attention. Who are you again? Figures. I can't say. Before I could even finish my sentence, he interrupted me. Forget about that. Tell me, what kind of woman are you into? he asked while doing an awkward pose. Nobara did a full eye roll at the antics and glared at me like, if I answered wrong, she would put one of those nails in me. I could only look at the eccentric man with a dubious amount of exhaustion reflecting on my face. 'Cause, of course, my type in girls is more important than even my name. How am I supposed to answer something like that when I can't even remember my own name? Don't worry, even if you like men, it's okay. Just be true to your I like girls. I snapped before I even knew it. Tadu nodded, his face with understanding. Still waiting for an answer. I roamed my eyes around. What do I like exactly? I mean, I know I like girls, but what in them? My eyes roamed to Nobara, who raised her brows in a suggestive gesture. Pursing my lips, I thought of just repeating what Yuji answered to Tadu in the Kyoto Sister Exchange event. However, I refrained from doing that. I don't need this man calling me brother like Yuji. Well, I have never thought about it, to be honest. And I doubt that guy over there will give me enough time to make a good decision. So how about we first take care of him and then come back to this question? I replied, not planning on answering period, while pointing at Mahito, who had already been sizing the newcomer up. And once our attention went back to the special grade curse spirit, Mahito didn't give us the luxury of conversation anymore. His body surged forward, distorting and expanding at the same time, flesh twisting outward into multiple extensions that lashed toward all of us at once. The scale of his attacks had grown, his control sharper and more refined after that last exchange, especially after landing that black flash. Seems like we have our work cut out for us, huh? Tadu nodded in understanding. Kujisaki, can you hurt that curse's soul with your technique? Tadu asked. Of course, he knew about Mahito and his soul-related powers. He had spent a good amount of time with Yuji after all. Yes, and the new guy here is not half bad either. She pointed at me as she gave me a hard pat on my back. Is that so? Tadu's eyes once again sized me up, as if his assessment of me were changing. I recalled that no matter how eccentric this man was, he was bloody freaking smart with his God-knows 6-digit IQ he claimed for himself. I barely managed to react before finally the calm around us broke and Mahito moved, and then everything around me shifted. Clap rang out. In an instant, my position changed, and I found myself where Nobara had been a moment ago. Mahito's attack missing me entirely as it struck empty space. At the same time, Nobara appeared behind him, already driving a nail into his back. Man, I found myself lagging after that black flash to the face. I need to stay concentrated. Another clap echoed, and the battlefield turned chaotic in a completely different way. Positions changed constantly, unpredictably, forcing Mahito to react instead of dictating the flow. I felt like my mind was spinning with every change in position Tadu was implementing every second. Keeping up with this man was no easy feat. Mahito twisted, his body bending unnaturally to avoid a direct hit. But Nobara's technique activated a second later, resonance tearing through him as the nail detonated. His form warped violently, but he didn't falter the same way as before. Instead, he adapted, his body splitting and reforming as multiple limbs burst outward, transfigured humans spilling from him like extensions of his will. Snap out of it! I cursed to myself. I had to join the fight. They came from every direction and I forced my cursed energy to come back to life. While the reverse was low, my cursed energy control itself was on another level after landing so many black flashes, and the most recent one had my cursed energy operating once again at 120%. Arms, faces, and twisted forms reaching and clawing, forcing us to keep moving constantly. I activated domain amplification around me again and struck one aside, only for another to come from behind, but before it could reach me, another clap rang out and I switched places with Tadu, his fist already mid-swing as he smashed through the mass. The coordination wasn't planned. If anything, it was messy as it comes, but it was working when To-Do was guiding the battle rhythm. Kujisaki and the new guy, you handle the damage. I'll open up the way for you guys. To-Do, after only a bit of observation, recognized how this fight would play out. His eyes narrowed ever so slightly when I used domain amplification. That was a high-level technique even when he didn't know what it was. That told him enough about my level as a sorcerer. Knowing that he was the only one who could hurt Mahito unless he resorted to using a simple domain and lost his technique usage, he would rather be in the support role. Mahito tried to reach for Nobara again, his arms stretching toward her, but before he could touch her, To-Do clapped, and suddenly I was in front of him instead, intercepting the attack with a strike of my own. He pulled back immediately, but that moment of hesitation was enough for Nobara to land another hit. Next moment, I was where Nobara was, my knocked-back punch unleashing the fury I held back earlier. The hit landed directly at his head, snapping it back, before I was gone once again. This was the true essence of jumping in JJK style. Maki didn't slow down as she moved through the vacant streets of Shibuya, dragging along a barely conscious Megumi on her back, whose condition would have been concerning even without the added absurdity of his current state. For once, the boy was completely naked. At least whoever did that to him had left behind his underwear. Second, she was no doctor. She couldn't say why the boy was unconscious, so taking him back to Shoko was her top priority currently. Lastly, she was irritated by all of this. Why was she supposed to be the one looking after this boy? She would rather be fighting out there. Damn it. Of course, she also realized how it looked. A teenage girl dragging another teenage boy on her back in the street while the boy was wearing nothing. The only good luck she had in this case was that the area was already vacant. Damn it, Megumi. She cursed again. By the time she reached Shoko, she had long since stopped caring about appearances, though that didn't make the situation any less awkward the moment she stepped inside. Shoko looked up from her latest patient, her usual calm expression already worn thin from the constant influx of injured sorcerers, but the sight in front of her made her pause for a second, blinking as if trying to comprehend what was going on. Fushiguro was injured and passed out. That was easy enough to understand, but what happened to his clothes? Her eyes moved from Maki to the unconscious boy slumped over her shoulder, and then very deliberately back again. I'm going to ask once, Shoko said slowly, blinking as if trying to process what she was seeing. Why is he half naked? Maki didn't even hesitate as she unceremoniously dropped Megumi onto one of the available beds, the boy landing with a dull thud. No time, she replied flatly, brushing her hands off as if she had just delivered a package rather than a person. He's alive. That's what matters. From the side, Masamichi Yaga, who had been overseeing the situation, glanced over and immediately froze for a second as his eyes landed on Megumi. His brows furrowed slightly, and then he looked at Maki with a very particular kind of confusion. Maki, he began, choosing his words carefully. Would you like to explain why Fushiguro is currently in his underwear? Maki clicked her tongue in irritation, already turning toward the exit. Ask him when he wakes up, he shot back, clearly having no intention of dealing with that conversation. I found him like that. Take care of him. I'm going, Maki stated, and then just as fast as she had come, she left. Kids these days, Yaga grumbled under his breath. Were we this bad back then? Shoko asked with an intriguing look on her face. Nah, you guys were worse, especially Satoru and Suguru, Yaga replied, sighing at how everything had turned out. Shoko let out a quiet sigh, stepping closer to examine Megumi's condition despite the bizarre circumstances. Found him like this? She repeated dryly, though her hands were already moving with practiced efficiency as she began assessing his injuries, but then stopped midway. What's wrong? Yaga asked with seriousness, re-entering. Fushiguro here, I can't heal him, Shoko slowly pointed out. You can't? Is his condition that bad? Yaga asked with contemplation. Shoko at this shook her own head. No, in fact, contrary to that, he is perfectly fine. I don't see any wounds on him, she replied. Then why is he unconscious? Yaga asked, confusion entering his tone. Wouldn't we all want to know that? Shoko shook her head, not caring too much about the boy's peculiar condition until she was done there and went back to the previous patient. Yaga folded his arms, still staring at the unconscious Megumi as if expecting some kind of explanation to appear on its own. With Maki, she was already moving like the wind towards the center of Shibuya, near the station where she first encountered that special grade curse. She made a beeline straight there. Amidst the destruction of Shibuya Station, a single figure had entered the station unannounced and unseen. Uram finally stood before the unconscious body of Itadori Yuji. It took her much effort to find him after he became unconscious and both his and Sukuna's cursed energy were suppressed. Her calm gaze fixed upon him as if nothing else in the world mattered at that moment. She slowly knelt beside him with deliberate grace, unwrapping a cloth she was carrying all of Sukuna's fingers in. So this is the vessel, she murmured quietly, her voice carrying a faint note of dissatisfaction. Without hesitation, Uram retrieved the preserved fingers and began her task. One by one, she fed them to him, ensuring each was swallowed properly despite his unconscious state. There was no resistance, no interruption, and no hurry in her movements. At least for a brief moment, it seemed as though everything would proceed exactly as planned. 5 fingers in, and everything was fine until she reached for the next one. A sudden surge of cursed energy tore through the corridor, and pure bloodlust was directed towards her. Uram's eyes flicked toward the source just as a massive wave of blood came crashing toward them, surging like a tidal force that threatened to swallow both her and Yuji whole. What do you think you're doing with my younger brother? Choso stood there with anger bubbling inside him and let loose a wave of blood at her. She reacted instantly. A burst of freezing cursed energy erupted from her, ice spreading outward in an instant and colliding with the incoming blood. The tide froze mid-motion, suspended in jagged formations of crimson ice, separating them. But the attack did not stop there. Get away from my brother, Choso shouted, hands already clapped behind the frozen wall of blood. Piercing blood. A concentrated stream of compressed blood shot forward with terrifying speed, cutting through the frozen wall of blood like a bullet aimed directly at her. The attack was so fast that Uram didn't even have the time to evade. Instead, she raised her palm, meeting it head-on. The impact was immediate and violent. It tore through one of her palms and only stopped by another one of her hands. The force drove her back slightly, the ground beneath her cracking as she absorbed the blow, her ice forming instinctively to reinforce her defense. Even then, it wasn't effortless. The attack pushed through her guard just enough to make the strain visible, though she ultimately halted it before it could reach its target. Her eyes narrowed slightly. A big scowl formed on her face. "Get away, you imbecile," she snapped. She had been waiting for this for such a long time, reviving her master. She would not have anyone delay her any longer. Of course, Choso wasn't going to back down. He surged forward, and Uram met him without hesitation, their clash erupting into immediate violence as blood and ice collided in rapid succession. Choso was no match for Uram. To be honest, it became apparent immediately once the fight started. However, he persisted. The confined space of the station could not contain the force of their attacks, each exchange tearing apart what little structure remained. It was a short duel, if anything, but the output of the fight was higher, much higher. And while they were struggling, Yuji on the side showed some movement. The fight had long since crossed the point of exhaustion and entered something far worse. where every movement felt forced and every breath came heavier than the last. Yet none of us could afford to slow down for even a moment. I was the worst offender of it. My cursed energy reserves were so low at this point that I could barely reinforce myself, let alone use RCT to heal and domain amplification to fight against Mahito. Healing Megumi earlier, then using RCT to fight Mahito, then opening my domain, again using RCT to fend off Mahito's sneak attack, and then healing myself again. I was not dangerously low on cursed energy anymore. I had practically become a dead weight. If only I still had both Jogo's and Dagon's reserves. At least Mahito wasn't faring better either. He stood in front of us, visibly worn now, his body no longer shifting as smoothly as before, the damage we had inflicted finally beginning to show despite his constant reshaping. Even so, he had grown stronger during the fight, and I could feel it clearly in the way his cursed energy pulsed after landing those black flashes. Yes, as in plural. The curse managed to land 2 more after he almost knocked me out inside the domain clash. He was improving mid-fight, the worst kind of enemy one can face, those protagonist-type enemies who figure shit out randomly and, the next second, by either the power of friendship or plot, pull a victory. This dude was like them, and it irritated me to no end. And yet, he wasn't flipping the table just yet. Not when it was 3 against 1. Jumping had quickly become one of my favorite sports. If I were to survive Shibuya, I'd enter into professional jumping tournaments as long as my side had more people. After God knows how many beatings, we were finally able to wear him down to the point he once again had trouble controlling his technique, and his reserves were down as well. Let's end this. Nobara spun her hammer in the air and grabbed it with a grinning face, eager to be just done here and go home. I wasn't as confident as her, though, because this was exactly like before. A wounded and cornered animal is the most dangerous after all, and this was a freaking curse. And that was exactly when everything shifted. I felt it, and so did Tadu. Nobara was the only one who couldn't. Everyone back. I shouted, and this time around they moved in unison, having figured out that between the 3 of us, my instincts were always on point. And sure enough, the change in Mahito's cursed energy was immediate and unmistakable. A sudden spike that made my instincts flare in warning before I even saw what he was doing. Mahito's expression twisted into something desperate and maniacal as his mouth opened unnaturally wide once again and hands began to form within it. Shit! Nobara by now caught on to what was happening and cursed. She swore she'd be learning any form of anti-barrier domain technique once she was out of here. My body tensed. If he succeeded, it was over. Being the only one with a domain of my own, it fell onto me to handle this. However, I didn't have the reserves anymore. I could feel how little I had left, my cursed energy barely holding together after everything I had pushed it through tonight. Hell, it's a miracle I did even this much. Those black flashes kept me going. But there has to be a limit, and I had reached mine. My mind recalled Tadu also had an anti-domain technique, but that wouldn't last much against a real domain. Damn it! Knowing I had no choice and the result might be no different either way, I forced myself to gather what remained inside me and joined my hands together. Even if it broke me, I had to. And then I felt a sudden sensation of lightness on me, the same kind I had felt a few more times earlier. And before I knew it, before either my domain or Mahito's domain was to expand, the ceiling above us came crashing down on us, out of nowhere. What the hell? Nobara cursed, grabbing me from my back collar and practically choking me to death while dragging me back, barely missing the collapsing rubble. The sound came first, a violent rupture above us, followed by a torrent of destruction as the entire structure gave way. However, it wasn't just rubble. There was also blood and ice. All of it came crashing down in overwhelming force, flooding the space with a chaotic surge that disrupted everything. Mahito, caught directly beneath it, was crushed mid-expansion, his domain collapsing before it could fully form. A coincidence? I guess not. Something definitely strange is going on here with me, feeling that strange lightheaded sensation and then an invisible hand flipping the table like it was made of cheap plastic. I staggered back, coughing at the sudden pressure Nobara pressed on my neck, greedily taking in air while sending a glare at the girl. What? I was helping you. She shrugged. She did it on purpose, didn't she? I narrowed my eyes, noting it down in my mental notebook to get even with her sooner or later. My attention went back to the collapsed rubble, the blood and ice, and of course the two figures who were in the center of it all. One white-haired person seemed like a girl to me, and another man, most likely my age or older, had markings running on top of his nose and messy hair. They were Choso and Uram. It was easy enough to identify them by the description alone. What I didn't get was why they were fighting all of a sudden. I looked up to the ceiling. The entire place had collapsed. Their clash had torn through the upper floor completely, and the result was obvious at a glance. Choso was in bad shape, his movements strained, and half of his body covered in ice. Uram looked in much better condition if not for her blood-soaked clothes, though she was breathing heavily. I knew listening to Kenjaku was a mistake. That snarly gremlin had to be taught a lesson after this incident. Just wait until Sukuna-sama gets revived. Uram cursed under her breath, clearly sneering at Choso and ready to kill him any second. She suddenly pressed down a cold sensation on all of us. My hair stood on end as a chill ran down my spine at how uncomfortable this sensation was. All of a sudden, the pressure around us increased. It weighed down on us like someone had put a 10-story building on our heads. Then the cursed energy, malicious as it comes, exploded around us. It spread across the entire area in an instant, pressing down on everything like an overwhelming weight that made my skin crawl and my breath hitch without warning. I gulped only to find my mouth was dry. This feeling was even worse than facing Maharaga. I slowly turned and saw the culprit behind me. Yuji Itadori's body rose slowly from where it had fallen, but it wasn't him anymore. Dark markings spread across his skin, taking a very familiar pattern, which gave me a heart attack. But why now, after I was so close to leaving this shit show behind? My lower lip trembled at the sheer injustice of it all. Because what stood in front of me was no longer Yuji Itadori. He was Ryaman Sukuna. I should commit suicide at this point. By the time Maki entered Shibuya Station, her pace had not slowed once. Her focus fixed entirely on finding the others. Yet the moment she stepped into the open corridor, she found herself pausing at the sight of someone standing there. Because of her condition, she wasn't the best when it came to sensing cursed energy and thus couldn't say whether a person was a curse user or a civilian. So she stayed alert. The woman looked completely out of place, her posture relaxed, her expression calm in a way that did not belong in the middle of this chaos. And for a brief moment, Maki couldn't quite place what to do about her. The tall blonde woman turned around, spotting her, and Maki's first thoughts were simple. She's either a curse user or a civilian who had no idea what was going on. Letting out a quiet, irritated sigh, Maki took a step forward, already preparing to tell her to leave before things got worse. But the way the woman's eyes lingered on her, especially her uniform, told Maki that this was someone who knew what she was. "You're from Tokyo Jujutsu Tech? Or are you from Kyoto?" the woman asked, showing no caution like Maki was. "Tokyo, and you?" Maki asked, clearly defensive at the sudden revelation that the woman knew of the jujitsu world and most likely was a sorcerer herself. The woman pretended to think something before opening her mouth to answer. However, before she could say anything, the air around them shifted all of a sudden. An unknown pressure came crashing down on both of them out of nowhere. The woman's eyes snapped wide open, her previously calm demeanor gone as fast as her neck snapped toward the floor they were standing on. Maki was the same. While she wasn't the best at sensing cursed energy, even a civilian would pick up on this overwhelming pressure. Maki's eyes darted towards the stairs. No doubt the pressure came from beneath them, from the underground floors. The woman seemed to pick up on her intentions, though, and she stopped her. "No time for that, girl. Brace yourself. We're taking a shortcut." Before Maki could question it, the woman clenched her fist and drove it straight into the floor. Maki's eyes widened as the ground shattered instantly. Before she could even curse the woman, cracks spread beneath them in an instant before the entire surface gave way, collapsing completely as both of them were sent falling down into the darkness below. Ryomen Sukuna, a name that had terrorized the sorcerers of the Heian era of Jujutsu. The strongest sorcerer of the past and the demon, said to be born with 4 eyes, 4 hands, and 2 mouths. He was a complete disaster, which most wouldn't even wish to discuss in the modern era. It was said that no one was able to defeat him, and even till the end he remained undefeated. However, there was no end for him in reality. He never died. In fact, he turned himself into cursed objects, all of his 20 fingers from 4 arms holding his power equally. For years, the higher-ups of Jujutsu Society tried to destroy those fingers, but it remained an impossible task. At least until a perfect host was found for them. And that host was Itadori Yuji. Sukuna can't take control of him since Itadori Yuji acted like a natural suppressor for Sukuna's powers and consciousness. However, that was only if Itadori had been given enough time to adapt to the multiple fingers he ate before consuming more. And in the absence of the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, Satoru Gojo, Sukuna's awakening was nothing less than a disaster. It was needless to say that we were cooked. I just remained there, unmoving, and kept on breathing just like everyone else upon seeing the King of Curses slowly taking over Itadori's body. There were more grievances in my heart currently than there were curses running around Shibuya. There he stood in Yuji's body, completely nonchalant, and yet, there wasn't much human left in the way he carried himself. Sukuna moved around in Yuji's body a bit, rotating his shoulders and neck to get a better grip on the body. All of Yuji's wounds were gone the moment he took control. Sukuna's presence alone was terrifying. His eyes moved slowly, taking in everything around him. All he saw were statues. None dared to move there. None except one, of course, Yuram. She slowly approached him and then knelt in front of him, lowering herself into a kneel, her head bowed in complete submission. Sukuna looked at her. For a second, there was no recognition in his eyes, only mild curiosity until he finally figured out by the cursed energy signature who he was looking at. Yuram.
Sukuna-sama.
Yuram grinned much like her master, deadly and cold. Sweat was forming over others' heads, including my own. My eyes darted ever so slightly towards the exit. It felt too far, which otherwise would have taken me less than 5 seconds to walk over. "Where are my other fingers?" Sukuna asked after a bit of pointless chit-chat with Yuram. Yuram blinked, and then her lips pursed. Her eyes darted back to the rubble they were standing on, and her anger for Choso just grew even further. Sukuna didn't bother asking again. She would get them later on. They weren't as important right now. Slowly, he turned his gaze toward the rest of us and smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. "I wonder," he began, his voice light, almost thoughtful, "how the brat would feel if I killed all of you myself. Man, I knew the guy didn't like Yuji, but to kill us just so he could see Yuji all broken? That's not fair, at least not to me. I don't even know Yuji." My hands clenched, trying to find any way out of this situation. Frontal combat was suicide. Running away didn't seem possible with Sukuna's speed and lethal slashes. My eyes went towards Nobara, who was equally petrified, and then to the only person who might be chanced at getting us out of here. Todo. His technique might help, but can he take all of us out in time? It's highly unlikely unless Sukuna intentionally lets us go. God, why? I know I've been complaining a lot, but if anything, this is all your fault. What kind of luck is this? Did you outsource writing my fate to the devil or something? My lower lip quivered. Felt like my eyes were stinging. It was so unfair. I try my best, and once again I was here, facing an even bigger monster than Maharaga. How is that fair? If my life in this world is just about surviving one monster after another, what's the point of living? Why send me here, God? There was so much I wished to say, but what was the point? There was no one hearing my complaints. It wouldn't matter. I sighed, deflated. If only I could live a normal life for one day. Just one. Eat whatever I want, kiss a girl, play video games. It is said that only upon the loss of certain things we take for granted that their real value is shown. And I couldn't even remember whether I ever had them. My regret-filled eyes turned to Sukuna again. Once again, the helplessness of my situation gardens anger inside me. Damn it! I have come to terms with death long enough. If I'll die anyway, and I can't change that outcome, I will die fighting. I took a deep breath and got ready. 'Cause damn it all, I'm not going that quietly. So, which one of you is ready to die first? Sukuna asked, grinning madly, fingers roaming towards us directly. Wherever it would stop, a lethal slash would cut open that person. And yet, I found my legs taking steps forward. Oi, what are you doing, you idiot? Nobara's eyes widened upon my actions. She chided with a panicked tone. Oh, we have a volunteer. Sukuna's eyes fixed on me, amusement darting into them. Something like that, I chuckled. And honestly, I just had it with this back and forth. Either I'll die or I'll survive like how I have been so far. Either way, I accept it. The only thing that is unacceptable right now for me is to linger in this state of constant frigidity. Dying is better than living in the fear of death. At least I'll be in peace. I'm completely out of cursed energy. Most likely I can't use my technique and certainly will die tonight. But what the hell? I'm going down fighting. I grinned. Sukuna, instead of cutting me down in a single dismantle, actually grinned back. Not bad, brat. Seems like some modern sorcerers aren't that bad. He pointed his finger towards me, ready to end it. After all, for him, it was all a fun game. However, what happened next even paused him when I brought both my hands together and formed a hand sign. The exact same hand sign of his own domain. I was doing them. Sukuna for the first time looked taken aback, and then the earlier grin turned into a full-blown smile. Interesting. Not if it wouldn't even work. Low on cursed energy, remember? I reminded him with an equal amount of mirth in my tone. Strange how surprisingly nonchalant a person could be towards death when he just accepts it's an inevitable outcome. I talked with him with the full realization that I was about to die tonight. And thus, there was no fear, just amusement towards my own situation. Domain expansion, I said, moving all the cursed energy I had in me. Sukuna's eyes narrowed slightly. Instead of the reckless move to buy time he was expecting, the brat actually seemed to invoke a domain just now. He could tell that it was a real domain, not a trick. Now he was honestly interested to see what kind of domain it would be. To use his own Enma palm sign, one that represents death itself. I, on the other hand, felt like my body was on fire. Pushing a domain to open with little to no cursed energy wasn't a good experience. Put a strain on your body and mind. It was as if refusing to open, but I pushed it nonetheless. Blood leaked from my nostrils upon trying to force the domain open, and a feeling of lightheadedness came over me. My body shook, struggling to keep standing while I pushed my domain to open yet again. But every time I met with resistance, the lack of cursed energy acted like a wall in my way. Like trying to make a car start without fuel, it wouldn't start, but you'd still stick with the expectation that it would. But what could I do? I only had that one trick. If even that didn't work, what else can I do? I just chuckled to myself, defeated. Too bad. Seems like that's all you are worth. Sukuna sighed, genuinely looking disappointed for a second. Just as Sukuna raised his hand to cut me down and moved to the next worthless sorcerer important to Yuji, and Tadu on the side seemed to raise his own hand to bail me out at the right time, something else happened. The same feeling of lightheadedness washed over me, and the next second, the ceiling above us broke apart once again. But this time around, it was from the upper ground floor. The sound came without warning, a violent rupture followed by the collapse of an entire section of the structure. Rubble, concrete, and steel came crashing down in a sudden, overwhelming cascade that forced everything else into the background. I barely had time to react. My body wasn't even in the best state to move in time. I saw a figure come directly at me, crashing down from above, slamming straight into me. Before I could even move out of the way, the force of it knocked me flat just as the rest of the ceiling followed, burying me and the culprit currently on top of me down in piles and piles of rubble. Darkness clouded my vision immediately. The falling rubble completed the job that person did by coming crashing down on me, and others could only watch in bafflement as 1 second I was there and the next, I disappeared under all that debris. Nobara, Tadu, Uram, and the barely conscious Choso saw 1 second the boy was going to face the king of curses himself, and the next he was under a floor's worth of rubble. Whether he lived or was dead, none knew. Sukuna's lips curled upwards just for a bit at the comedic turn, but he turned his attention to the newcomer. The boy was already forgotten. The rubble had barely settled and a new figure was visible to everyone. The place where she landed had a small crater just beneath her, cracks running all around underneath her. And for just a second, people wondered how long this floor they were standing upon would last against monsters of this caliber. Even through the haze and destruction, there was something unmistakably composed about her presence, her cursed energy signature resonating loudly. Finally, the face of the woman was revealed. Blonde hair, long and fairly well-built for a woman. There was only one person there who knew her personally, despite almost everyone having once or twice heard of her. One of the only 4 special-grade sorcerers of Japan. Yuki Tsukumo, teacher, Tadu shouted out, grinning brightly upon seeing this missing teacher of his after such a long time. Oh hey, todo. Long time no see. How ya kid been doing all this time? Yuki responded cheekily with a wave of her backhand, while her eyes naturally fell onto the reason she had to make such a drastic entrance in the first place. So, you're the Sukuna vessel those old geezers told me about. Tsukumo observed Sukuna in Yuji's body. Even she felt a bit of an uncomfortable feeling being stared down by that kind of curse. He almost reminded her of Okatsu. They met once on a mission. That level of cursed energy was exactly like Okatsu's, but it was way more malicious than anyone she had ever seen. Quite a surprise, though I won't get to have fun coming and taking over this brat's body. There is no fun fighting small fries after all. Sukuna grinned. Of course he was able to tell the woman was strong. How strong? Well, that was for him to find out, and he was eager to test out his power after such a long time. He was still at half, but that should be more than enough to handle this woman. Perhaps not enough to beat that white-haired man, but anyone else, there wasn't even a question. Ryaman Sukuna was already looking at her, his gaze sharp and heavy, the kind that made even seasoned sorcerers hesitate without realizing it. Tsukumo quickly brushed a bit of dust from her shoulder, at the same time brushing off the heavy killing intent from the king of curses in front of her. As if she had simply arrived late to a meeting rather than dropped into a battlefield, she gave a small, casual nod. Sorry about the entrance, she said, her tone light despite everything. Name's Yuki Tsukumo, special grade. Sukuna's grin widened slightly, clearly amused rather than threatened. Special grade, he repeated, his voice carrying a faint edge of interest. Pesky titles you modern sorcerers give to those you think are strong while being ignorant of real strength. Yuki tilted her head just a little, studying him in return. "Heh, and how would anyone know about being strong?" She shrugged casually. "Only the victor decides how the system works." Sukuna smiled back, perfectly matching his ideology. And that perfectly brought an end to their little chat there. This was enough. "Well, I can't argue with that." Sukuna rolled his shoulder, finally moving toward Tsukumo. The air shifted instantly as Sukuna moved, his hand lifting in a motion so casual it almost looked lazy. Yet the attack that followed was anything but. A slash tore through the space between them, invisible but unmistakable in the way the ground split apart in its wake. Yuki reacted immediately. Even though she couldn't see the attack coming, she reinforced her body with cursed energy to tank the incoming strike. A shallow gash was left behind on her chest, clothes splitting and blood flickering out of her wound. It wasn't deep, however, that was just a casual attack from the King of Curses, and that was when he was at half of his power against a special grade. Even Yuki felt the difference in the power gap. That one attack was enough for her to know that if she fought long range, then she would lose. So her body moved with precise timing as she stepped in rather than away, closing the distance before another ranged attack could follow. At close range, everything about her changed. The force behind her strike carried an unnatural weight, her fist slamming towards Sukuna with a density that distorted the air itself. Though he was a genius of jujutsu, even Sukuna couldn't tell a normal punch apart from one where Yuki was using her technique. As for her technique, it was Star Rage. She could add virtual mass to herself without the downside of having her weight increase or her speed decrease. So when Sukuna tanked that hit with the expectation of a normal strong punch from a modern sorcerer, he faced his first and might be his last face-slapping moment in this match. Tsukumo's punch went right through his hand, breaking it into two, and struck him right in the face, rocketing him back like a shuttlecock, making a beeline straight for the wall behind him. Even for a second, Yuram was baffled at the result of the first engagement. But then her irritation skyrocketed. How dare this woman do this to her master? Part of her wished to freeze her to death and shatter her into a million pieces. However, she didn't, knowing fully well that that would be an insult to Sukuna-sama, acting as if she didn't believe he could win. So, she settled with throwing a deadly glare at the woman instead. To do at the same time moved to join in, clearly intending to support her. But before he could intervene, Yuram stepped in his path, ice forming instantly as she cut him off without hesitation. "You will not interfere in Sukuna-sama's match," she stated coldly. "Did this man here call that woman a teacher earlier? Fine. The student will pay for her teacher's crime. Stay back, to do. I'll handle this one myself." Yuki barely looked back from the side of her eyes and replied. Those slashes were deadly. She could barely tank them. To-do wasn't ready to handle them just yet. To-do clicked his tongue, already preparing to force his way through no matter what Yuki said. But before the clash could escalate further, Yuram's body faltered slightly. She kneeled and coughed up blood while her body shook like a withering leaf ready to fall. What is this? Her eyes shook with both confusion and at the timing of the sudden weakness showing up. It's my blood. From the side, Choso grinned up and replied. The poison from Choso's blood still lingered within her after she tanked his piercing blood attack earlier, and only now it began to take effect. Back at the center, the fight intensified. Sukuna got out of the wall, still grinning and intrigued at the technique the woman might have. The punch hit much, much harder than the woman moved. It wasn't cursed energy either. If it were, then he would have felt it. Meaning, Sukuna almost instantly determined what her technique might be. For a monster of jujutsu like him, it was child's play to figure out. Altering your mass, is that it? He grinned, his broken hand healing at a visible rate. Yuki paused at how quickly he figured out her technique to get the boost. No wonder they call him the King of Curses. Her silence was answer enough for Sukuna. He grinned even more. This would be a nice fight. MCPOV. I found myself being crushed and suffocated by something soft and warm. The lingering darkness clouding my eyes wasn't just because of me forcing my body beyond what it was naturally intended to do, but also because of the lingering dust and all that rubble above blocking the light. Ah, what the hell? I heard a groan and whoever was above me shifted slowly, allowing me to feel everything about her. Yes, it's a her. I can tell by the voice and the soft weight on my chest. Her moving made me move as well, and a sharp pain rang out inside me. Wait, wait, wait. Don't move. I yelped and my hands shot out right at where I believed her waist was. She jolted at the sudden contact, and that brought another jolt of pain from that movement. You bastard! Where do you think you're touching? She shouted, trying to move, but the rubble had only created a small gap for us. Even an inch of movement was greeted with resistance. Please don't move. It hurts. I said again, gritting my teeth as the pain rang through my body again at her struggle. At my plea, or perhaps because none of her struggles were fruitful, she finally stopped. By then, the dust around us was slowly settling down, and the small amount of light from the gaps of the fallen floor waste finally made both of our faces visible to each other. Wait! It's you again! The girl blinked, half snorting and half surprised. Hey there, Maki, I said, though the smile was forced. How come you're always running into trouble? She knocked her brows up with genuine interest. I'll pay good money to know that myself. I chuckled, and once again the pain rang inside me, letting out a groan. Maki picked up on that. Are you hurt anywhere? My stomach, I replied with difficulty. Maki nodded, and slowly, very gently, which honestly didn't suit her loud personality, moved her hand there with difficulty. There wasn't enough space to lift her body, and she was lying right on top of me. As her hand moved near the place I described, it felt a warm liquid sensation, and even she stiffened when a protrusion hit her midway. Something has pierced you, she stated with a calm expression. However, there was a little soft tone mixed in there. She couldn't move that rubble even with her raw strength. Knowing the condition outside and the fact that no one had brought them out yet, meaning they were practically stuck here. Figures. Not a great way to go, but I'll take it. At least I have a beautiful girl on top of me. I grinned. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. Having something this beautiful on top of you was a great view while slowly bleeding out to your death. Maki rolled her eyes at the comment despite the rising tension of my situation. If you can crack that joke, then you'll be fine. Can you use your cursed energy? She asked. Nah, I'm completely out. I shook my head. TCH. Fine. Stay still. I'll try to move. She sighed and slowly started to move her body in a way so she wouldn't move me much. Just as she was going onto her all fours and pushing the rubble up by her back, something under the sole of her left foot shifted, making her balance give out, and she fell face first towards me. The angle was both a blessing and a curse. It completely rattled me, pain erupting out of my stomach so much that I wished to scream. However, I couldn't do it because they were claimed by her own lips. Her lips met mine, and my hands shot out to stop any and all movement she was creating to ease the pain. I wasn't gentle about it either. The hug I gave her was strong and desperate to stop her movement. So, there we lay, she above me. Our lips connected while my hands wrapped around her in a dead grip. Maki's eyes shot open when she felt the soft, warm sensation on her lips and hurriedly tried to move back, but the boy was desperately clutching onto her, his entire body shaking like a leaf. Even amidst their accidental kiss, the painful groans were clearly audible to her. She calmed down, letting her body once again go soft and stop all the resistance. Once the boy's grip slightly loosened, she slowly, very gently moved her head back. Only a tiny bit, to the point their lips were centimeters apart. Her tongue rolled around her own lips, and she didn't wish to think about it, but it tasted sweet. Shoo! It's fine. I'm not moving anymore. She comforted me while her face was so close that if I were to lift my face even slightly, I could have had myself another kiss. I let out a very small, painful chuckle. Okay, now I can die happy. Idiot. Maki rolled her eyes again, but even she had to say the boy had spirit. Can you now let me go? She pointed at the dead, suffocating hug I was giving her. I slowly eased up but didn't let go. Instead, I looked back at Maki. Maki? Can I tell you something? I said while my hands slowly moved upwards. One hand completely wrapping around her toned waist and the other across her back, resting on her shoulder blade. What? She felt the movement but didn't comment on it. Damn it, even speaking was hard now. I don't want to die, I said with tears slowly leaving my eyes. My hands once again clutched hard against her back, bringing her into a hug again. In the modern era, Jujutsu sorcerers and curses alike are put into categories or ranks to differentiate between their power, capabilities, and threat levels. The ranking follows the same logic on both sides, from grade 4, which is the weakest, to grade 1, which is considered to be the natural ceiling for most Jujutsu sorcerers and curses. However, grade 1 isn't the end. If anything, it is the peak where the real powerhouses of this world are separated. The entities and beings who surpass grade 1 are called special grade. Curses and sorcerers who hold enough power to take over entire countries with their power. Currently, there are only 3 special grade Jujutsu sorcerers in Japan, following the death of Suguru Geto last year during the night parade of 100 demons. And there were a total of 16 registered special grade cursed spirits so far. The gap between a common grade 1 sorcerer or cursed spirit and a real special grade cursed spirit or sorcerer was immense. So much so that to kill a special grade, even carpet bombing sometimes wouldn't be enough. However, that was just the recorded and existing ranking. Anomalies as they were, there were tiers even within the special grade ranking. The best example was none other than the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer of the modern era, Satoru Gojo. He alone held enough power to take control of the entire world and even destroy it in its entirety. And there was only one recorded being so far who rivaled him. The king of curses from 1,000 years ago, Ryomen Sukuna. Yuki, a special grade sorcerer herself, finally realized this difference when she fought him. She did not hesitate for even a moment once the fight began in earnest, closing the distance between herself and Ryomen Sukuna with relentless intent. Fully aware that her advantage lay in proximity where her technique could exert its full, crushing force. And yet, knowing that the fight was in her favor if it became a close-range match, her opponent didn't back away to use his obvious long-range advantage. If anything, he darted right in for hand-to-hand combat. And what surprised her the most was the next hit, which she landed on him. Unlike the first, where she caught him off guard, tore open his hands, and sent him flying back. This time, Sukuna blocked the same punch that did so much damage to him just a few seconds ago. He was still thrown a few steps back. There was a visible wound on his arm, however, the damage was far from what it was a minute before. Yuki's lips pursed tightly just seeing the difference. That alone told her that this wasn't going to be an easy fight. Her prediction felt more correct when he effortlessly healed up the wound without any second thought while casually sending a few more invisible slashes her way, which she could neither see nor avoid. Tanking them was the only option, and she found they were even more deadly than the last slash she faced. This was the start of their match. The back and forth seemed to continue while non-special grade sorcerers like Nobara and Tadu could only watch in tension. Both Yuram and Choso, for all their worth, weren't in the condition to interfere after Choso suffered injuries from Yuram and was currently half frozen, using his blood manipulation to melt off the ice, while Yuram was infected by Choso's blood, which was poisonous. And even in their state, Their attention was only on the special grades clashing a little further away from them. The said clash became immediately violent, the sound of impact echoing through the underground space as their blows met with enough force to crack the floor beneath their feet. Sukuna reinforced his body with a dense layer of cursed energy, compensating for the unnatural weight behind Yuki's strikes, while simultaneously taking advantage of the close range she insisted on maintaining. He launched Cleave on her. His technique, Shrine, was a cutting, cursed technique. The invisible slashes he threw were called Dismantle, which were actually one of the weaker aspects of his technique, whose power or variations he could neither control. However, Cleave, that was different. While needing contact to perform, unlike Dismantle, Cleave was far more powerful and customizable. It was the first time Yuki felt it. She didn't fully understand what had happened until it was already too late. Sukuna's hand brushed across her midsection in what seemed like a minor motion within the flow of combat. Yet the result was catastrophic. In a single moment, half of her stomach was gone, the wound so clean and devastating that even she staggered from the shock of it. Her reinforcement, her natural flesh, bones, and muscles were useless against that attack. A single touch left her cut open like she was some piece of meat on a chopping board. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead. Breathing became impossible for a second, but she did not fall. Her reaction was immediate. She forced reverse cursed energy through her body to stabilize herself, and the missing flesh reconstructed under immense strain as she pushed through the damage. Even so, the lesson was learned instantly. From that point onward, her approach changed. She remained aggressive, still closing the gap whenever possible. But now there was caution woven into her movements, a constant awareness of Sukuna's hands when fighting up close. "What's wrong? No longer so eager to fight up close, are you?" Sukuna grinned, the mockery in his tone clearly evident. "I don't have to when I can do it," Yuki retorted, and the next second she grabbed onto her Shikigami, Garuda, on which she could apply her technique, striking from a distance with sharp, unpredictable movements that forced Sukuna to divide his attention. At times, Garuda lashed out to bind him, wrapping around his limbs in an attempt to restrict his motion, while at other moments it served as a distraction, creating openings for Yuki to capitalize on. But Sukuna was anything but unadaptive during battle. He instantly switched to Dismantle to knock off the Shikigami, which the woman used as a whip, as a ball, or as a binding tool whenever it drew near. Just as she was about to launch another high kick at Sukuna, he predicted that and went under her, aiming directly at her abdomen to use Cleave. Yuki's jaw clenched at the sudden change. She couldn't dodge that point-blank attack. She could only use more of her cursed energy to reinforce herself. However, just as Sukuna's hand was about to make contact, clap, the next second Yuki was gone, and in her place was Uram. The hand directly hit her on the shoulder. However, nothing happened. Sukuna's reaction time was as fast as always. He deactivated the Cleave the moment contact was made. That's a pretty troublesome technique right there. Sukuna's eyes roamed to do. Yuki also appeared where Uram was earlier and sighed in relief.
Thanks, todo.
No problem. He grinned and got ready to fight alongside her. But once again, she refused. "No, stay here and help me from afar," Yuki warned, because for someone like Todo, a single dismantle from Sukuna would be their end. And she was right. Sukuna sent a slash after him, knowing how troublesome Todo's technique was. Even though he couldn't see the slashes, his IQ allowed him to predict them, and he managed to escape using his technique. "Pesky," Sukuna grumbled. The fight continued. However, as they fought, the more damage the underground station was taking, the sooner or later the entire structure would be coming down on them. So Yuki had to drag Sukuna out of there somewhere. Of course, Todo helped. Their battle continued without pause, the open space only allowing them to fight more freely. their attacks now visible from far beyond the immediate area, finally bringing attention from other sorcerers who were active in Shibuya like Momo, Kamo, Miwa, Kuzukabe, and more. However, none of that mattered when the opponent they faced was a special grade. Sukuna just grinned at more people who his worthless vessel was friends with, meaning more targets to kill by the same brat's hands. However, as if Yuji himself heard his thoughts, suddenly Sukuna felt a sudden loss of control. It was only temporary, but he realized that he didn't have much time in this body. Tij, guess this is all the time 5 of my fingers would give me. He snorted, and after making sure Megumi Fushiguro wasn't near, he brought both of his hands together. Yuki's eyes widened when she saw what Sukuna was doing and immediately shouted, "Todo!" Aoi Todo, with his 530,000 IQ, didn't need another sign. Using his technique, he instantly took all the others away from the area. Domain expansion. Sukuna grinned, and in response, Yuki too had to open her own domain and brought her hands into the sign. Malevolent. But just as Sukuna was about to manifest his domain into reality, a squishing sound and sharp pain rang out inside him. His hands, which were making his domain sign, were separated by a thin sheet of metal protruding from his chest. His fingers were cut open by the blade, piercing his heart from behind him. Even for a second, even the King of Curses was taken aback by the sudden sneak attack, which even he couldn't see coming. He snapped his head behind. This woman. Facets of a curse technique. Curse techniques could manifest in any form, could be related to anything, and are mainly defined by the era it has been manifested in, the person in whom it has been manifested, and the connection of blood one might hold in their lineage. The more complex a technique is, the more facets it tends to have, especially a domain-based technique such as Death Trade. Most domain-based techniques do most of what they were intended to do inside their domain. However, this doesn't mean the user has no power to command their technique outside their domain. Every domain-based technique has some facet or extension usable by the user even outside their said domain. As for what it is in the case of a technique like Death Trade, of course, it's related to trading. While the technique achieves its original intent inside its domain by forcefully imposing various trades of the user's liking as long as the value or conditions are met, outside of the domain, the conditions are different. Without opening its domain nor having any sure-hit effect, one can't impose any trade on others. However, the technique still allows them to trade. Not with imposition, but rather with accordance. Given the nature of the technique, the user can either propose or receive an offer of any goods or value to be traded, and upon agreement from both parties of their own accord, a trade may take place even outside of the domain. And that's how we can get out of here. I explain everything to Maki about my curse technique, how it works, and what I can offer her in trade after I was done coddling her like a newborn babe, crying my eyes out about how unfair the world has been to me. I never explained what really happened. I felt like I wouldn't be able to stop bawling my eyes out if I opened that can of worms today. To my surprise, the girl just stayed there while I cried, holding on to her, not stating a word while occasionally caressing my hair to comfort me. It was a very strange feeling, but I felt light when I was finally done. Light and hella embarrassed. So I try to forget the last 15 minutes like they never happened and quickly come up with a way for us to get out of here. Ahem. So you want to make a trade with me? Maki cleared her throat, finally snapping out of everything that happened. The boy, crying while holding on to her, then started to explain his technique all of a sudden. And for some unknown reason, she couldn't come to interrupt him. Felt so genuine when the boy just clung on to her like that. When was the last time someone did that? She clearly remembers that it was always my doing that. When they were small, rushing up to her and just crying into her embrace. And before she knew it, she was comforting the boy just like how she used to her sister. It unknowingly fulfilled that hollow space inside her. But then came silence, which was awkward even for her, the innocent party. If that wasn't it, the boy started explaining his technique. Maki knew it was about trade, having seen it against Dagon enough. It was a domain-based technique much like Hikari's. But as he explained more, her eyes widened until they couldn't close anymore. Even she didn't realize that by the time he was done talking, she was gaping. She had to clear her throat and hide her shock before asking. What kind of trade are you asking from me? She asked. He just looked at her again. She could find his eyes looked tired and his face a bit more pale. He was losing blood. Curse energy. What? Maki blinked. This woman. Sukuna looked back, for a second ignoring the sword sticking out of his chest, piercing his heart or Yuji's heart, for that matter. I couldn't even sense her behind me. Sukuna's mind reeled upon seeing Maki's grinning face, looking directly at him with the kind of intensity that almost felt like an invitation to help her figure out what she was capable of now in this new body of hers. Give me all your curse energy and in return, I'll make you like him, he said, and Maki didn't get it at first, but now she understood. She was always at half of her potential. No, not even half. That little bit of curse energy she had always held her back. Now, she felt power which was hard to describe. Quite interesting. And here I thought you and this brat were friends. Sukuna, even though surprised at the sudden sneak attack on him, shook it off like it was nothing. Piercing his heart like this, don't you care about him? Maki just snorted. If you wished to kill him, you would have done it long ago. Sukuna just shrugged at that. There was indeed a point there. He can't refuse. Sukuna once again read her. No cursed energy, no warning, no presence of her. There was nothing to read off from the girl to track her anymore. In an instant, she was already inside his range again, moving so fast that Sukuna almost missed it. Almost. Her blade was carving through the space where his neck had been a fraction of a second ago. Sukuna leaned back, just barely avoiding it, his grin widening. Before he could counter, Yuki was already there. Her fist came crashing in from the side, layered with impossible mass. Sukuna raised his arm to block. Boom! The impact cracked the ground beneath them, forcing him a step back. The difference this time was immediate. He wasn't allowed to recover because Maki was already on his trail. No wasted motion or hesitation. Her blade came down again, this time aimed at his torso. Sukuna twisted, narrowly avoiding being split open, but the edge still grazed him, drawing blood. And as they did, a maniacal smile appeared on his face. He was starting to enjoy this fight now. Not bad, Sukuna muttered, ducking under another swing as Yuki's kick followed, heavy enough to distort the air itself. My turn then. With a flick of his wrist, a slash tore through the space, a fast and discreet dismantling directly at Yuki. She tanked it as usual, and at this point, since the wounds weren't very deep, she wasn't even bothered to heal herself, and Sukuna wasn't interested in that either. He looked at Maki, who also had to tank a dismantle from him, and to even his surprise, the woman with no curse energy or reinforcement survived his dismantle. Interesting, just by how durable your own flesh is, you can survive my dismantle. Sukuna grinned, like the fact Maki could do that brought him entertainment. As for Maki, her condition was exactly like Yuki's, almost a similar kind of long-running slash across her body, not too deep but still stings. Her natural heavenly restriction body was so durable that she tanked it just like a special grade sorcerer using body reinforcement. Maki didn't even register the wound. She struck once again, already moving towards Sukuna. A clean, direct thrust aimed at his heart once again. Sukuna shifted at the last possible moment, the blade piercing through his side instead. He grabbed her wrist instantly, but Yuki was already moving. Her hand clamped onto Garuda, swinging it like a weighted whip. Sukuna was forced to let go, twisting away as the strike came crashing down where he stood. The ground exploded. Both women were going at Sukuna together from all sides. Even the King of Curses had a hard time handling this sudden jump, and from afar watched the other sorcerers, students from Kyoto and Tokyo. Whoa, is that Maki-senpai? Nobara looked starstruck, eyes wide, when she finally surfaced to the ground. Just like everyone else, she was surprised at Maki's sudden transformation. In fact, it was a very funny story. While most were focused on Sukuna and Yuki's fight, she was the only one who bothered to dig them out. Halfway in the rubble, though, suddenly the rubble shifted on its own in front of her and then everything blasted apart, revealing Maki completely fine, looking like she just recently hit the gym, holding that same boy who refused to give his name in a princess carry. Nobara had no idea how to react to that. 1 second Maki was holding the boy like a princess and the next she put him down and vanished. Well, it was moving at a very fast speed, but in Nobara's eyes, it sure seemed like the woman vanished. Come on, you might want to see this. The boy grinned at her, then ran toward the stairs. Oi, wait for me. Nobara only came to her senses later on and ran behind him. By the time they came back to the surface, which wasn't easy at all by how much the upper floors have collapsed, they saw the fight in its full glory. 2 absolute badasses of women throwing down with the King of Curses. And of course, just like everyone else, Nobara was surprised by the changes in Maki. For once she was keeping up with both Sukuna and Yuki, and secondly, she was hitting Sukuna much more than even Yuki did. Partly cause her particular condition left no curse energy signature behind for Sukuna to read and predict her next move. So only his eyes and years of fighting experience were helping him predict Maki's movements. Reading Yuki's move, on the other hand, was much easier. Honestly, it was a bloodbath. Both women are relentlessly pursuing the King of Curses, and they weren't holding back either. They fully intended to kill Yuji if it came to it. Maki swung her blade again, but Sukuna dodged just in time and went to touch her, planning on using cleave. Don't let him, Yuki on the side shouted, fully knowing what Sukuna was aiming for. She had no idea what happened to the girl to suddenly make her like that man from all those years ago. But if Sukuna were to touch her, even her body couldn't protect her. Maki's reaction time currently was top-notch. While dodging in time wasn't an option, she decided to sacrifice her sword to back off, bringing her blade in front of her hand while she herself moved out of the way. The moment Sukuna's hands touched the sword's flat sides, a grid-like pattern was formed all over its blade until the entire cursed tool was disassembled into piles of smaller squares. Just as Sukuna was ready to pursue her again, Garuda from behind grabbed his leg and Yuki flung him back with all her might. Sukuna, midway, sent Dismantle to loosen up the Shikigami and damage it, while once again facing Maki, who met him midway. The battlefield was pure madness. The back and forth continued until suddenly Sukuna for a second faltered and was sent flying back by Yuki's kick. He landed on a wall with a crash. Already healing, but now a visible scowl was plastered on his face. TCH. He's already waking up. Useless brat. He spat and then turned back to Yuki and Maki once again. Seems like fun time's over, he said with a cool tone while his eyes for once flickered to the Shibuya station, which seemed around 70 meters away or so. Fine then, take this as farewell for now. He grinned and brought both of his hands together in a familiar gesture once again. Both Yuki and Maki immediately became alert. While they had no idea what Sukuna's domain was, they knew it would be nothing good for them. On the side, everyone panicked. After all, a domain is the strongest move in a sorcerer's arsenal. Domain expansion malevolent shrine. I could only watch in awe as both women go toe-to-toe against the King of Curses. Of course, I knew that he was close to half of his power. Even after not knowing how many fingers he has eaten, that still doesn't make it less impressive how well those two were faring. But my concerns lingered to the very end until I finally saw the signs of Sukuna opening his domain. Yuki somehow caught him off guard and kicked him away a good 50 meters or so. And when he got up again, he didn't rush back in. That alone was concerning. And then there was that sudden momentary lapse in his defense, which Yuki capitalized on. I had a feeling that he was slowly losing control over Yuji's body. And that was concerning because if that was indeed the case, then he might stop engaging with those two directly and domain expansion, malevolent shrine. My eyes bulged. I knew this would happen. I snapped my head towards Yuki and sure enough, she was already forming hand signs to expand her own domain.
No!
I shouted. Nobara was startled at my sudden shout, glaring at me like she was a second apart from nailing my mouth down with her hammer. I didn't care. Hell, I didn't even look at her. My eyes were only on Maki and Yuki, already knowing the outcome of this domain clash. Irritation and helplessness once again drew on me. Was there nothing I could do? On the other side, Yuki didn't seem to hear my voice. She rushed to Maki's side. Having some idea about her particular condition, she wasn't worried about her that much. But still she decided to open her domain where she could cover Maki from Sukuna's sure hit effect. Stay back, she advised and formed her own hand sign to expand her domain the moment Raiman Sukuna began expanding because even she understood that allowing him to complete it uncontested would mean certain death. Her cursed energy surged outward in response, forming a barrier around her as she brought her own domain into existence. What troubled her was that there was no other barrier clashing with her own. For a brief moment, the world seemed to fracture between them. Of course, she targeted both Maki and Sukuna to draw them inside her domain. She by no means thought that she could win a domain clash against the King of Curses. However, her plan was to damage Sukuna with the help of Maki, just enough that his own domain collapses before hers does. It was a sound plan if not for him being Sukuna. Yuki's domain stood firm at first, its barrier solid and defined, enclosing its space with precision and control until it completely landed. However, there was no sure hit, no opposite barrier to clash with hers. Yuki couldn't figure out what Sukuna was playing here, but she didn't like where this was going until she finally found out what actually happened. It wasn't that Sukuna hadn't deployed his domain. It's just that his domain had no barrier. An open barrier domain. How is this possible? Her eyes trembled when she finally learned what was going on. At first, she, of course, couldn't even believe in the fact that something like this was possible. Expanding a domain without a barrier was much like trying to paint, but without a canvas. How can a painter paint in air? It was absurd as it comes, but here it was, happening right in front of her eyes. And once her own domain was completely established, it finally dawned on her. Not only did Sukuna's domain manifest without a barrier, but it had a greater range than her own. It's like creating a smaller bubble inside a larger one. And since everyone inside the said bubble, aka domain, falls under the sure hit effect of one's technique, that means her own domain barrier was vulnerable to attacks executed from outside of the barrier's range of her domain. It was overwhelming and unnatural at how absurd Sukuna's domain was, as it claimed everything within its range without restriction. She couldn't even sense how far his domain was deployed, but she was certain it wasn't a small area. The difference was immediate and undeniable. Where her domain created a contained space, his simply existed, imposing itself upon reality rather than separating from it. The clash began the instant they overlapped. At first, there was resistance, a moment where both domains pressed against each other, neither yielding immediately, but that balance did not last. Sukuna's refinement asserted itself almost instantly, the sheer precision and mastery behind his domain tearing into the structure of Yuki's barrier. Invisible slashes were carved across its surface, not as attacks directed at her, but as a natural consequence of his domain's existence. Her own sure hit effect was starting to get overwhelmed, and the barrier started to collapse. It was still better than how a simple domain would fare in this condition, but not by that much. Not only was her domain getting overwhelmed by the sheer gap in both domains' refinement, but also her barrier's outer shell was repeatedly being slashed by Sukuna's technique. Her barrier began to break, and the domain started to shake. Cracks emerged into her domain within seconds. "What's going on?" Maki asked. She knew about domains, but that was her limit for jujutsu. How they work and what goes on in them was beyond her. However, by just observing Yuki's face, which was sweaty and panicking, she was certain that whatever was happening was bad. "URG." Yuki groaned, trying to keep her domain intact, but it was impossible. The weight of Sukuna's domain was immense, and since Sukuna was also covered in Yuki's domain, he could see everything. Grinning as he enjoyed the futile attempt of the woman in front of him. Cracks spread rapidly across the space, each one widening under the relentless pressure as Sukuna's domain continued to slice through it from every direction. Yuki held her ground, reinforcing it as much as she could, but the difference in refinement was too great. Her domain was being dismantled piece by piece before it could fully stabilize. Due to concern over Megumi Fushiguro and Uram, Sukuna had kept his domain smaller than 50 meters currently. However, it didn't take away the magnificence of the feat of jujutsu it was. No one on the sidelines could understand how unimaginable an open barrier domain was, because none had a domain in the first place. None except me. And yes, I was enthralled at how it was placed. No barrier, and still the domain contained itself just right. The efficiency and control were just right without leaving power on the table. For a second or two, I just stared at Sukuna's magnificent domain until I heard a sound of glass shattering. It was Yuki's domain. It finally shattered. The barrier collapsed entirely, breaking apart under the strain as Sukuna's domain consumed the space without resistance. What followed were relentless slashes directly to both the women. Cleave and dismantle flew towards both of them from all angles, cutting open their flesh, bones, and identity itself. Yuki especially took the full brunt of it since Maki didn't have any curse energy, and according to Sukuna's domain design, anything which doesn't possess curse energy will be sliced by dismantle, the weaker of the two attacks, while things possessing curse energy, it was cleaved into pieces. Arg! Maki groaned under the relentless barrage of slashes coming her way. She was bloodied and cut open from every possible place she could imagine. And worse, she wasn't even hearing anything from Yuki anymore. A bad premonition clouded her mind. She bore the frontal assault of continuous dismantling until she could no longer even stand. She barely opened her eyes to see Yuki's body lying motionless, still being cut apart. She tried to move, but her body had taken too much damage. Moving didn't seem possible. She gritted her teeth. The unwillingness to accept defeat after finally achieving this power was so sour. She still had to go back to the Zenin clan and show those sons of bitches reality. She had to become the head of the clan. Her sister was there watching her as well. And indeed, Mai was watching with tear-filled eyes, helpless to do anything. Just as she felt this was the end, she heard his voice again. Domain expansion. All of a sudden, the slashes stopped. The pain eased just a bit. She opened her eyes once again, and surely it was him. The same crybaby from earlier, standing in front of her with both hands in the same hand sign as that monster. Maki saw darkness filled around her. A big shadow of something emerged from behind her. Her bloodied form too became hard to view under the dark fog covering his domain. And before she knew it, his domain covered everything. Even Sukuna's figure remained outside of the main as he closed his barrier, and the constant slashes stopped. However, just as the domain closed, the barrier of the domain started to shake, wavering and crumbling down almost instantly. Arg! He groaned under the pressure. Maki could hear it. "What are you doing, you idiot? Get out of here," she shouted, but there came no reply from him. He just stood in his place. and slowly the cracks began to form around his domain. This domain was too destined to fail against Sukuna's. Just as Maki thought it was a hopeless case, a momentary rush of idiocy doomed even him while trying to save them. She suddenly felt the domain stop shaking. The withering domain calmed down all of a sudden as if it had been established. And from behind her she heard a sound, like something moved. KLNK. Maharaga. Full name: Eight-Handled Sword Divergent Sila Divine General Maharaga. It's the strongest Shikigami of the 10 Shadows technique, and perhaps even the strongest Shikigami in the world. And yet, no 10 Shadows user until today has ever subjugated him. The answer was simple: Maharaga was too strong. And yet, someone else was able to achieve that same feat, which none of the Zenin clan ancestry was able to accomplish today in Shibuya. I did it, but what was the point when I didn't even have the 10 Shadows technique? Technically, I should be getting anything and everything from my opponent as long as they died in my domain. Those were the rules of the trade, since they too would receive everything that I owe if I were to die by their hands. And even when I beat Maharaga, I didn't have a complete domain, neither the sure hit effect nor the barrier. The technique itself was still valid. I had to remove those parameters to make my domain lighter so my overloaded brain could execute my domain, and in exchange for those parameters I also got a good buff against Maharaga back then. However, the point still stands that I should get Maharaga's powers, since he technically died inside my domain when my technique was active. Then why didn't I? Well, that's cause of the bottleneck. Not the technique itself, but me. Apparently, my body wasn't capable of adapting like Maharaga, and thus I couldn't get his adaptations. It's like going after Gojo's 6 eyes. Let's say I somehow get my hands on them and jump on Gojo while he was bathing and has his infinity down or something. Even if I were to beat him and trade those eyes, I can't use them, because those eyes are coded to him, his bloodline. I mean, think about it. If 6 eyes were really such a big deal, one would think that the Gojo clan would preserve eyes from their last user and at least try to implant them in a normal limitless user born with 6 eyes. Considering how incredible healing with reverse curse technique was in this world, one might even think that the 6 eyes user himself produces dozens of those eyes himself. He just has to pluck them out, heal, and repeat. But that doesn't happen because they won't work for others. My technique gives me whatever I want as it is. Can't make the thing or myself adapt to each other. Maharaga's adaptation was the same. So one might ask, did I not get anything after being nearly killed in that encounter with that monster? Of course not. Here the very nature of Maharaga, which wouldn't let me have his power once again, came into place. Since he was a Shikigami, my technique can just shift his allegiance towards me. But then there was another issue at the horizon. I didn't have 10 shadows either to control him, so my technique did the next best thing it could. It made Maharaga my domain-specific Shikigami under the trade of absolute obedience towards me inside my domain, in exchange for not being able to summon him outside of my domain. However, there was a big problem with this approach. I learned when I fought against Mahito and opened my domain that Maharaga will only manifest when I land my domain, and it's been completely manifested. Meaning it can't appear during domain clashes, only when my domain has completely taken dominance. What was the point of that? If I were to land my domain, why would I rely on that monster when I can just put right trades to win my way out? Completely and utterly useless. So what to do? And thus, I underwent another binding vow. KLNK. That was the sound. Maki forced her body to move. Turning her head, she came face to face with a giant structure, a cross, with 2 weighing plates hanging on its arms. It was huge, but that was what surprised her. There was something else on the cross, no, rather, someone else. It was a massive white-skinned humanoid behemoth with 4 wings growing from his face and a snake-like tail emerging from the back of his head. Above his head was a wheel, a golden wheel hovering just above his head. But what really surprised her was that this massive figure was crucified to the cross. The vow was simple. In exchange for not summoning Maharaga to fight anyone inside my domain, he shall take over the functioning of my domain. Basically, I put him in the pilot seat of my domain. Now I just have to launch the domain and provide curse energy. He does the refining for me. Since now he was an integral part of my domain, he manifested immediately as soon as I opened my domain, not waiting until my domain was completely manifested, taking over my load of domain execution and refinement completely. I honestly didn't think it was possible, but it worked. Currently, Maharaga was adapting to Sukuna's domain and using those adaptations to refine my own domain against him. And he will keep on doing that given enough time until my domain prevails. KLNK. Another time the wheel on top of Maharaga spun, and the domain felt much more stable. The constant shuddering and impact felt inside the domain when under collision with a more refined domain's sure hit was almost gone. However, exactly at the same time, I felt my heart hammering and I stumbled down to my knees. My breathing got heavy as soon as I opened my domain and it was getting worse. Well, I guess not everything is sunshine and rainbows. Cough, cough. I coughed a mouthful of blood as the pressure on top of me increased as time passed. This was cause my curse energy reserves were running dangerously low, almost empty. I only had a little bit left with what I took from Maki and regenerated over time. I had barely healed my abdomen before once again I had to open this domain. I was running out of curse energy reserves. However, that was just half the truth. In reality, it was Maharaga. Since he was now an integral part of my domain with my binding vow acting up, that means every time I expand my domain, I also have to expend additional curse energy to summon him. Every single time. And he wasn't a cheap Shikigami to summon. Far from it. So, while he took over the execution of the domain itself, the cost of the domain rose alongside it. I might not get technique burnout like this, but I'll completely burn my reserves out for sure. A dark chuckle escaped my lips and I finally couldn't take any more and coughed up more blood. The expenditure was killing me. On the side, Maki's eyes went back to the domain, which was surprisingly stable all of a sudden now, and then back to the crybaby who, what's wrong with him? Maki's eyes narrowed. He was panting and kneeling down and coughing blood. All the blood seemed to drain from his face. Yuki too had gone completely still. Whether she lived or not was unknown. Maki only spared 1 second looking at the fallen woman and shifted her attention back to him. She gritted her teeth and dragged her wounded body to him somehow, and indeed, he was breathing heavily. If he failed, then all three of them would die. Him staying awake and conscious was far more important. Hey, what's wrong? You doing good? She grabbed onto his shoulder and steadied him, but the boy didn't reply. He just stood there with both his hands on the domain sign, shaking while barely holding onto the domain. What's wrong? Is it the domain? Maki pursed her lips. She didn't know why he was like this, nor did she have any way to help him. She could only do one thing. She went behind him and held him to stop his shaking. You're fine. I got you, Maki shouted, her bloodied figure overlapping with his to keep him straight and prevent him from falling. Little did she know that I was dying from keeping the domain up. Maharaga was adapting to Sukuna's refinement first. It had almost adapted to his refinement, so I have to do both. Maintain the outside barrier and supply curse energy to keep the domain from collapsing. Not to mention, every time Maharaga seems to make minor adjustments to the domain parameters, it uses up more of my curse energy. Crack. It was the barrier. Even after I reduced its size, it was still cracking under the full-blown assault of malevolent shrine attacks from outside. Maharaga was currently handling the refinement, basically the internal stability of the domain. He needed time to adapt to that, only then he can handle the barrier. And I had neither enough curse energy to maintain the barriers nor the power to keep the barrier up for much longer. I gritted my teeth. I am so freaking close to this nightmare. Come on, don't die just yet. But no matter how much I tried to push myself, my vision was already going dark from the load. I have already tried to make binding vows to somehow fix the barrier and curse energy problem, but nothing seems to work. Crack. Another crack opened up in the domain, almost breaking it apart, and I was losing hope. Barely able to keep my eyes open, I tried to think of anything that would help me keep the barrier up, but nothing came to mind. And just as I thought I'm done for, that same lightheadedness washed over me for a second. And the next moment, I felt it. Curse energy. But how?
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going. Plus, it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.